Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles. Chapter 4291. Actually, it's not just you, even Master, has a hard time getting out of the quagmire of these mundane affairs. Although cultivation is a personal matter, it is also a sex matter. For the Fortune Gate, for the Tao sect, Master has to leave more means. The mountain range under your feet, and the busy disciples, is also a Fortune Gate that Master wants to build in the Pure Land. In the future, Master will also establish a sect in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and even other places. He. Fu Jiwen laughed. With the number of Fortune Gate disciples on the Shenhua continent, it's possible to build 10 more Fortune Gates. Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Fu Jiwen and said, "Do you think Master is willing to build so many sects? If possible, Master would rather you cultivate in the Shenhua continent and not come out. But in reality, you will definitely be like this old man in the future, reaching a bottleneck in your cultivation and having no choice but to ascend to the immortal world. Master also has to consider for you as soon as possible." Lu Yi and the others naturally understood Xiaohua's painstaking efforts and bowed. Subsequently, Xiaohua left Jiang Hong and Lu Yi behind. The other disciples each led 2,000 disciples back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range on the hidden immortal continent to support the Fortune Gate led by Xiong Yi and the other disciples. However, when the disciples were flying away, Yuanya was a little bashful and actually whispered to the disciples he led to leave first. He wanted to return to the Shenhua continent first. Xiaohua glanced at Yuanya in bewilderment. He did not understand what was going on. Even the Thunderbolt Immortal was bewildered. However, Xiaohua did not say anything. He shook the Kunlun mirror and collected Yuanya. Then, Yu Zhongquan and the others left first. When Jiang Hong and Lu Yi saw that Xiaohua had left them behind, they couldn't help but feel anxious. After Yu Zhongquan and the others left, they hurriedly knelt in the air and begged for forgiveness. "Master, disciple knows his mistake, please punish Master." Xiaohua didn't know what they were talking about, but his face was still as calm as water. He asked indifferently, "Since you know, then tell me, what did you do wrong?" Lu Yi knew Xiaohua's temper, and without waiting for Jiang Hong to speak, he had already explained the reason. It turned out that the Yu clan and the Lu clan of Shenhua continent already had some grudges. In order to compete for the title of the #1 aristocratic clan of Shenhua continent, they had fought countless times. Previously, Lu Yi and Yu Zhongquan had also mentioned this matter to Xiaohua, but Xiaohua didn't care. He only felt that since it was a place with people, there would be conflicts. Although the ancestors of the Yu family and the Lu family were martial brothers, with so many branches and leaves in the family, it was inevitable that their closeness to each other would deteriorate. Fighting was also inevitable, as long as it wasn't too excessive. This time, Lu Yi's report caused Xiaohua's expression to change again. This was because a descendant of the Dragon clan of the Lu clan had been defeated by a disciple of the Yu clan because of his bravery. Moreover, this descendant of the Dragon clan didn't openly challenge him again. Instead, he used poison to poison this disciple and nearly 100 people from the Yu clan's side branches to death. Although the actions of the Dragon clan's descendants were very secretive, there were no secrets in this world. After the truth was found out by the other branches of the Yu clan, they gathered nearly 1,000 people to attack the Lu clan, a branch of the Dragon clan. The two clans engaged in a chaotic battle, and another 400 people were killed or injured. In the end, this matter alarmed Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi. The two of them used thunderous means to suppress this chaotic battle, and even sentenced the descendant of the Dragon clan to death. Of course, this matter was suppressed, but the rift between the two clans seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi didn't dare to report this matter to Xiaohua. They wanted to wait until the Thunderbolt Immortal was in a good mood to tell him first, then report to Xiaohua. But today, Xiaohua actually returned to the 3 continents and even sent out a group of disciples, leaving Lu Yi and his wife alone. Lu Yi had a guilty conscience and immediately confessed. Hearing this, Xiaohua's face was already ashen. However, Just as he was about to get angry, the Thunderbolt Immortal smiled and transmitted a message: fellow Taoist, don't forget about the heavenly demon. Similarly, don't forget about the fight between the Taoist and Confucian cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. Don't forget about the crushing and killing between the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators. Alas! Xiao Hua sighed. He understood what the Thunderbolt Immortal meant. If there were no humans on the Shenhua continent, then it would be fine. But since there were humans, how could there be no fighting and killing? Moreover, he also put the heavenly demon into the space. Wait for me to get up. Xiao Hua flicked his sleeves and helped the two of them up. He said, since you two have already dealt with this matter, Master won't say anything else. The population of the Shenhua continent is already large enough, and our fortune gate also has countless disciples. Master can't manage your descendants, but you two are absolutely forbidden from killing each other within the next 3 generations. Seeing this, Jiang Hong hurriedly replied, Master, please don't worry about this. The relationship between us senior and junior brothers is very good. There definitely won't be any gap between us. On the Shenhua continent, other than the Lu family and the Yu family, are there any other families? Xiao Hua slightly nodded and asked. There are no other families among this disciple's senior and junior brothers, and there are a few among the 3rd and 4th generation disciples, but they are all useless. Jiang Hong replied, knowing everything like the back of her hand. Then let's support some. Xiao Hua reminded in a bad mood, in such a big Shenhua continent, there are only 2 aristocratic families playing around. Isn't it too lonely? Yes, this disciple understands. Jiang Hong was stunned. She didn't expect Xiao Hua to give such an order. However, Xiao Hua's next sentence reminded her, if you don't know what to do, go and ask your martial uncle Wen Chu. Confucian cultivators are very good at forming alliances, and even sowing discord is very good. Yes. Jiang Hong lowered her head and answered. Other than this, Master has another matter that I might need the 2 of you. That's why I asked you to stay. Xiao Hua finally said, you 2 return to the Shenhua continent and wait there. Subsequently, Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror and sent Jiang Hong and Lu Yi into the space. Fellow Taoist. After receiving the 2, Xiao Hua was a little impatient and asked the Thunderbolt Master, the development of the matter, seems to be out of my control. Fellow Taoist doesn't stay in the space often, so you don't know about these things. The Thunderbolt Master laughed and said, in fact, this kind of thing happens every day on the Shenhua continent. At first, I was just as confused as you were, but as I watched, I began to realize something. The so-called control, doesn't mean you can control everything in the space, but you can control the general trend and direction of the space. As long as there is no world-ending disaster, no large-scale blood sacrifice, and so on, it's fine. We are not gods, so it's impossible for us to control all the details. Oh, of course, perhaps in the future, when fellow Taoists' divine ability reaches a certain level, you can also control such details, then we'll talk about it again. Development is always a trend. Xiao Hua nodded. If the space was the same as before, with only spiritual herbs and no people, you and I wouldn't have so many opportunities, and neither of us would be satisfied. The space will always develop, and our strength must also change and improve accordingly. Fellow Taoist, please work hard. The Thunderbolt Master smiled and said, the current space is no longer the space I know. Therefore, fellow Taoist must also work hard. Xiao Hua replied with a smile, then looked at the busy Fortune Gate disciples, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He let out a long sigh and fell silent. Why is fellow Taoist sighing? The Thunderbolt Master was puzzled. Naturally, it's because of the future of the Fortune Gate disciples in the space. Xiao Hua said in a low voice, when the time comes, we can't send all of them from Shenhua continent to Hidden Immortal continent, right? Moreover, there are so many people on Shenhua continent, I can't send all of them out. When? When fellow Taoist ascends? The Thunderbolt Master asked. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. Why can't it be like now? The Thunderbolt Master was still confused. Just stay on Shenhua continent with them. On Shenhua continent. I'm afraid that without ascension, it will affect their cultivation. Xiaohua replied, moreover, we have never been to the immortal world, who knows what it's like. Since there are no problems in the higher realms, what's the problem in the immortal world? Speaking of which, still don't want to take the risk if I'm not confident. So you want to expand the fortune gate in the 3 continents? Yes, it's a backup plan, just in case. It's really troublesome. The Thunderbolt Master smiled bitterly, as the saying goes, success depends on space, failure depends on space. I don't need to think about this matter, I should go and set up the transmission array. Alright. While speaking, Xiaohua brings the Thunderbolt Venerable and flies in another direction. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, Xiaohua saw a place with clear mountains and clear water. He released his Buddhist awareness and looked around for a long time before asking, fellow Taoist Thunderbolt, what do you think of this place? Very good. The Thunderbolt Master also released his divine sense and looked around before saying, this place is more secluded, it's the most suitable place to set up a transmission array. After saying that, the Thunderbolt Master raised his head and looked at the sky again. He saw that the dark red clouds above the snowy mountain had already moved here with the 2 of them. The dark clouds had already become somewhat transparent, and streaks of dragon-like lightning gradually appeared. Fellow Taoist, do you need I to help you? The Thunderbolt Master asked worriedly. There's no need. If I don't want to attract the Thunder Sound Temple's attention, I can release my divine sense now. Xiaohua said nonchalantly, it won't be too late to deal with this matter after I arrive at a safe place. After saying that, Xiaohua activated his escape technique and the 2 of them flew towards the depths of the earth. When they arrived at a certain place, Xiaohua released his puppets and ordered them to open up space. Xiaohua then handed the Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token to the Thunderbolt Master and said, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to set up the transmission array here. This Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token has the Black Wind Ridge's transmission array's divine sense mark. Fellow Taoist can just set up the transmission array between the 2 continents. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I can even set up a transmission array that can pass through the barrier between the 2 continents. This simple transmission array between the 2 continents is simply a piece of cake for me. The Thunderbolt Master bragged a little as he received the Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token. Chapter 4292. How could Xiaohua not know the pride in the Thunderbolt Immortal's heart? However, he didn't point it out. He only smiled and said, then fellow Taoist can build a teleportation formation here first. Once it's done, head to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. Of course, if fellow Taoist can sense space, feel free to enter it first. Oh. Why are you going to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm, fellow Taoist? Taoist Thunderbolt was rather puzzled. Could it be that there's something wrong with that 5-colored demon? Not bad. Xiaohua nodded. That day, I wanted to search the soul of that 5-colored monster. Unfortunately, he was 1 step ahead of me and self-destructed. I couldn't get too many things. However, from the information I've obtained, there seems to be a force in the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm that's interested in me. I have no choice but to go take a look. Fellow Taoist, aren't you going back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range first? The Thunderbolt Immortal was even more baffled. Previously, when you asked Fujiwen and the others to return to the hidden immortal continent, I thought that you wanted to stay in the Pure Land world and wait for I to build the teleportation array. Who knew that you were actually going to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm? But how long would it take to fly to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm? Why don't we wait for I to finish building the teleportation passageway? Fellow Taoist, you can go to Black Wind Ridge through the teleportation passageway before heading to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm from there. No need. Xiao Hua says with a mysterious smile, I still have some matters to attend to in the South Sea Dragon Palace. Furthermore, Sun Jian has already informed I that there is a teleportation channel between the South Sea Dragon Palace and the North Sea Dragon Palace. Fellow Daoist, have you lost your mind? The Thunderbolt Immortal was greatly alarmed. Fellow Daoist, you have greatly offended the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm. Aren't you throwing yourself into a trap by going there? Aren't you afraid that they'll make a move? That was then and this is now. Xiao Hua said with a smile, would the current Xiao still fear the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? It's not a matter of whether I'm afraid or not. You don't have to be afraid in other places, but in the Dragon Palace, you have to be careful, right? In my opinion, if there's nothing urgent, it's better not to go near the Dragon Palace. The Thunder Immortal advised seriously. I don't seem to have any grudges with the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I will go and see their attitude first before making a decision. Seeing that Xiao Hua had already made up his mind, the Thunderbolt Daoist didn't continue to persuade him. He said, then fellow Daoist should go first. After I finish building the teleportation formation, I'll also rush over to give you a hand. All right. Xiao Hua nodded. After a long while, when the puppet had finished digging the space, Xiao Hua cupped his hands towards the Thunderbolt Immortal and flew out of the ground towards the South Sea. Xiao Hua soared into the sky and immediately used the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. His flying speed became even faster, and when the surrounding scenery started to blur, pieces of light started to appear before Xiao Hua's eyes. Xiao Hua understood that he would soon be able to enter a speed that surpassed the lightning escape. Just as Xiao Hua's body began to show signs of dispersing, shua, a light sound rang out. The laws of heaven and earth landed on Xiao Hua's body and forcefully stopped it from dispersing. The light and shadows around Xiao Hua revealed their original appearance. Xiao Hua frowned. A bad feeling emerged in his heart and he increased his speed again. After doing this several times, Xiao Hua still couldn't reach the state he was in the Great Desolate Continent. Xiao Hua unconsciously understood and thought to himself, damn it, it seems that in these three continents, the lightning escape technique should be the end of all escape techniques. The laws of heaven and earth don't allow escape techniques that surpass this speed to appear. It's absolutely impossible for me to cultivate the light escape technique in the cultivation world. However, my current 5-element escape technique is still lacking the wind escape technique to reach the high level. Moreover, the 5-element origin is still lacking the water origin. Even the wood origin and wind origin are not completely fused together because the time I obtained them is too short. Perhaps after I've perfected all of this, I'll try the feeling of being enveloped in light again. Finished thinking, Xiao Hua didn't try anymore and urged the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven to fly towards the South Sea. Although he still hadn't reached the realm of being enveloped in light, his lightning escape technique had already surpassed the previous one. When the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, there was no longer the sound of thunder that previously resounded through the sky. Only lightning could be seen flashing and his figure instantly traveled 1,000 li high up in the sky. The green-red transparent cloud was not much slower than Xiao Hua as it chased after him. Not to mention Xiao Hua rushing towards the South Sea Dragon Palace, the Maitreya Buddha of the world stepped on a rainbow bridge and crossed the void. Seeing the source of the Buddhist light, many wonderful sounds appeared one after another and many Sanskrit chants sounded. In the distance, there seemed to be an incomparably huge temple emitting Buddhist light that was even more vast than the sea. The Maitreya Buddha of the world knew that this was the Lain Temple of the three continents. The end of the rainbow bridge was below the steps of the temple. However, that temple was completely composed of Buddhist light. There were no Buddha sons or Buddhist protectors. Even where the Maitreya Buddha of the world's gaze fell, that temple would twist and rotate like falling leaves in the sky. When the Maitreya Buddha of the world turned his head to look at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva beside him, there was also no trace of him. It was as if Samantabhadra Bodhisattva had never existed. The Maitreya Buddha of the world's Buddhist sense swept through the surrounding space again and discovered that this space was filled with strange fine lines. It was like a layer of seal that separated the space of the Lain temple from the surroundings. Moreover, the Maitreya Buddha of the world felt that his golden body was like nothingness in this space. That originally condensed Buddhist lotus had layers of wind-blown wrinkles. Strange. The Maitreya Buddha of the world was somewhat bewildered. However, he still lifted his foot and landed on the steps of the Lain temple. Namantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namantabhadra Bodhisattva. Waves of Buddhist chants resounded from the Lain temple. At the same time, the steps condensed from Buddhist light under the Maitreya Buddha of the world's feet began to rotate. They turned into golden sutra runes in the shape of a swastika. It actually formed a huge whirlpool, sucking the Maitreya Buddha of the world into the space below the Lain temple. The Maitreya Buddha of the world felt that layers of Buddhist visions flashed past his eyes. Thousands of golden sutra runes intertwined together to form a world that resembled a spider web. When his eyes suddenly lit up, a familiar yet strange voice resounded, Amitabha. Welcome back, junior apprentice brother. When the Maitreya Buddha of the world raised his head, he saw a Mahavira hall in front of him. There were already 2 Buddha lords standing in front of the hall. Weren't they the Mahavira Buddha of the world and the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world? Behind the 2 Buddha lords, there were 2 bodhisattvas. The Namantabhadra Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was in sight. As for the other Buddha lord, he was also familiar with the Namantabhadra Bodhisattva, the Namantabhadra Wisdom Manjushri. After the 2 bodhisattvas, more Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and arhats were standing there with their palms together. Namantabhadra Bodhisattva. The Maitreya Buddha of the world put his palms together and bowed. Greetings, senior apprentice brothers. Junior apprentice brother, enter the lotus cleansing pond to cultivate your body first. The Mahavira Buddha of the world's face was filled with joy. He raised his hand and pointed at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's feet. I understand. The Maitreya Buddha of the world looked at his feet. It was a boundless pool of jade water. This jade water didn't have any waves. Millions of golden sutra runes were hidden within this jade water. Every drop of jade water showed the birth and destruction of a small kiliacosm. Above this jade water, there were countless lotuses. These lotuses were all blooming with 9-colored brilliance. His body fell within a pillar of golden light. When this golden light fell within the lotus pond, it covered a total of 81 lotuses. Oh! When the Maitreya Buddha of the world lowered his head, he was a little surprised. Previously, his golden body had already started to turn into nothingness. However, when he reached this place, he was completely composed of lines. The golden sutra from before had completely disappeared. It seemed to have condensed within the lines. However, the Maitreya Buddha of the world didn't hesitate at all. His figure landed on the lotuses. The lotuses suddenly expanded and shone with golden radiance. They grew to a height of more than 80 feet. However, when the lotuses bloomed, the entire lotuses suddenly shook. The foundation connected to the dragon cleansing pond let out strange creaking sounds. There were traces of cracks. Looking at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's golden body, which was covered by the lotuses, it didn't become plump due to the expansion of the lotuses. The Mahavairakana Buddha of the world frowned slightly and turned his head to look at the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world. Then, the 2 Buddha lords slightly closed their eyes. However, in just a moment, astonishment appeared in their eyes. After exchanging glances with each other, the Mahavairakana Buddha of the world raised his hand slightly. Buddhist lights shone from his hand, which instantly enveloped the entire dragon cleansing pond. There were only 3 world lords left in front of the dragon cleansing pond. Junior apprentice brother. The Mahavairakana Buddha of the world asked, of our Buddhism's golden body 9 transformations, junior apprentice brother, are you at the first transformation? That's right. The Maitreya Buddha of the world nodded calmly. Junior apprentice brother's exquisite leaf sutra doesn't seem to have been completely cultivated. The Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world continued asking. That's right. The Maitreya Buddha of the world nodded. This disciple came from the Buddhism's last days. I didn't obtain the complete exquisite leaf sutra. Amitabha. So that's how it is. How sad, how wonderful. Compassion appeared in the eyes of the Mahavairocana Buddha of the world and the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world, as if they had seen through the cause and effect of Jian Luer's Buddha fruit being snatched away by Buddha Bodhi. The Mahavairocana Buddha of the world looked at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's Buddha form and said, the Maitreya Buddha of the world is the future Buddha Lord. The exquisite leaf sutra he cultivates is a martial art of the future world. If you want to cultivate the future world, you must first cultivate the past world and the present world. Therefore, the exquisite leaf sutra you obtained isn't incomplete. It's incomplete. If you want to cultivate the exquisite leaf sutra to perfection, you must first cultivate the past and the present. In other words, the missing content of the exquisite leaf sutra doesn't exist in this world. The Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world continued, instead, it exists in the hands of the past Buddha Lord and the present Buddha Lord. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Only now did the Maitreya Buddha of the world understand. The two missing pieces of golden leaves of the exquisite leaf sutra pagoda couldn't be found outside of the Thunderclap temple. Unless the Maitreya Buddha of the world obtained them from the past Buddha Lord and the present Buddha Lord after attaining fruition. Chapter 4293. Please wait for a moment, Junior Apprentice Brother. I'll give you the part of the present world that I'm in charge of. A piece of gold leaf flew out from the swastika between the eyebrows of the Mahavairocana Buddha. The Buddhist light on the gold leaf flickered. It was the boundless aura of the Buddhist kingdom. When the gold leaf landed in front of the Mahavairocana Buddha said, Junior brother, please listen to me after you get the cultivation method. Namo Mahavairocana. The Mahavairocana Buddha didn't mind and nodded. He pointed at the golden leaf, and it disappeared immediately. He said, please speak, senior apprentice brother. Don't worry. It won't be too late to tell you after the Dipankara Buddha gives you the part of the past world. The Mahavairocana Buddha said with a smile. Buddha. At this moment, the Dipankara Buddha suddenly said, have you thought it through? If it's senior apprentice brother, what would you do? The Mahavairocana Buddha didn't answer but asked instead. I understand your intentions, revered one of the world. The Dipankara Buddha didn't answer but smiled. Another golden leaf appeared from the Mahavairocana Buddha symbol between his eyebrows and fell into the Mahavairocana Buddha's hand. After the golden leaf disappeared, the Mahavairocana Buddha said, Mahavairocana Buddha. You've achieved enlightenment. You won't enter the cycle of reincarnation and fall into the secular world. Your golden body is clean and your Buddha heart is stable. You won't be fated with the secular world anymore. I congratulate you. However, your golden body has just reached the first stage and hasn't gone through the first transformation. To live as long as the heavens and become immortal, you still have to go through 9 transformations to reach perfection. Of course, your foundation is very good. As long as your cultivation method reaches perfection, you'll be able to reach the living Buddha realm. You won't be far from the Buddha kingdom's guidance, going through the first transformation of the golden body, and reaching the 9-layered Buddha land. I understand. Thank you for your reminder. The Mahavairocana Buddha put his palms together and said. However, your golden body has merged with the karma and merit of your previous incarnation. This is a test for you, and it's also an opportunity. If you can pass the karma, you'll be able to achieve the 9 transformations of the golden body. The Mahavairocana revered Buddha changed the topic and said, however, according to what I know on a whim, junior brother, may harm laying temple because of the heart tribulation. Junior brother, I hope you can remember what I said today. Cultivate your Buddhist heart and scrub the mirrors diligently. Don't let the demonic tribulation get close to you. Hiss. The Maitreya Buddha sucked in a breath of cold air. He frowned at the two revered beings and asked curiously, "Senior brothers, if that's the case, why did you still give me the cultivation method?" Amitabha. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha's face showed mercy as he said, "What belongs to junior brother is junior brother. I will not spoil junior brother's cultivation because of a possible heart tribulation. Once junior martial brother's divine ability gradually matures, I'm sure you'll understand my painstaking efforts." Amitabha. The bitterness on the Dipankara archaic Buddha's face intensified. He pressed his palms together and said, "I hope that junior apprentice brother will remember the words of the World Lord today." The Mahavairakana revered Buddha frowned for a moment. Then, he shook his head slightly and said, "Revered Buddha, I've thought of all kinds of possibilities. However, I still came up with nothing. I don't know why I would harm the Lain temple." Amitabha. Junior apprentice brother, you don't have to think too much. We Buddha lords are still humans. Before we attain the 9 transformations golden body, it's impossible for us not to make any mistakes. I'm only feeling it in my heart. It might not come true. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha smiled and said, "When that day comes, junior apprentice brother, just remember what I said today. You don't have to think too much." Revered Buddha, I'll remember what you said today. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha bowed and answered. Amitabha, Amitabha. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha and the Dipankara archaic Buddha both pressed their palms together. Then, as the Mahavairakana revered Buddha raised his finger, lights and shadows appeared once again. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha smiled and said, "Mahavairakana revered Buddha, please enter the lotus cleansing pond to reconstruct your current body." "Thank you, revered Buddha." The Mahavairakana revered Buddha answered and stepped into the lotus cleansing pond from the lotus. Gurgle. As the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body entered the lotus cleansing pond, bubbles appeared on the jade water. Within the bubbles, billions of small kiliacosms were born and swarmed into the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body. Rumble. A thunderous sound resounded. Before the Mahavairakana could walk out of the lotus cleansing pond, the power of faith had already emerged from the void and continuously poured into the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body. The Buddha radiance behind the golden body flourished. The scene of the Namo Mahavairakana Samantabhadra reconstructing his current body appeared once again. However, the momentum was several times greater. When the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body expanded to 100 feet in size, the lotus platform beneath his feet had also reached the 10th stage. Only then did the golden body of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha fly out of the lotus cleansing pond. Namo Amitabha, Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha, Namo Mahavairakana, the 3 revered Buddhas stepped onto the Thunder Sound Temple's Buddhist platform, and waves of Buddhist chants resounded. Thousands of Buddhist lights rushed out from the Thunder Sound Temple, sprinkling all over the Pure Land. Within each temple, the previously empty seat of the future Buddha Lord gave birth to the image of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha within the Buddhist lights. This Buddha statue exposed his chest, and a smile hung on his face. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha has returned. When the Buddhist lights sprinkled all over the place, Xiaohua had yet to leave the Pure Land. Seeing the Buddhist lights catching up to him, Xiaohua's figure stopped in midair. The expression on his face was a little strange, as if he had lost something in his heart. This little monk's fate with Buddhism is indeed deep. Wen Chu flew out. Looking at the Buddhist lights dancing in the sky and the entire Pure Land's world filled with joy and jubilation, he couldn't help but sigh, "I'm the first to cultivate. Although I'm the strongest now, I still haven't obtained any positive results." TSK. The Thunderbolt Immortal also flew out and said unhappily, "You've already been chosen by all the sages, Wen Chu. How can you say you haven't obtained any positive results? Don't tell me you want the Immortal Emperor to give the throne to you." Wen Chu said with a smile, "Immortal friend, you don't know. We Confucian cultivators have a saying, if you learn both civil and martial arts, you can sell your goods to the imperial family. Many Confucian cultivators have different cultivation goals from the Taoist sections. They are all racking their brains to enter the immortal palace. I know about this. You told me a lot in the past. The Thunderbolt Immortal waved his hand and said, "Don't tell me you've become so unscrupulous now. Do I need to? I just feel that this little monk's luck is too good. He ran a little faster than me." Wen Chu seemed to be somewhat disdainful. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Everyone has their own fate. There's no need to envy others. As long as we work hard, we'll reap the rewards." After saying that, Xiao Hua's figure flew again. He flew towards the distant place where the mist was faintly discernible. In the Laying Temple, thousands of Buddhas were resting. The sound of Buddha gradually faded into the void. The heavenly flowers also slowly disappeared in the sky. After the bustling scene, the three Buddha lords and revered ones had smiles on their faces. Their gazes were filled with benevolence, as if they could see through the void and see the many small worlds. After a while, Mahavarakana revered one said, "Junior brother, how do you feel when you first entered the Laying Temple?" Revered one, when I arrived at the Laying sacred ground, I realized that the sacred ground is the source of faith and the beginning of Buddha's light. Attaining the fruit is the end of cultivation, but it's also the beginning of cultivation. Our Buddhism is completely different from the Confucian cultivators, Taoist sects, and even the demon race's cultivation. The 9 transformations golden body, every transformation is the tempering of a world. Every transformation of the golden body is also the suffering of a person's life. After the 9 transformations, the number of golden bodies is comparable to a huiyuan. This kind of perfect realm is the true cultivation method. Junior brother is still wrong. Mahavarakana revered one said with a smile. Maitreya Buddha raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "Disciple doesn't know, please enlighten me. In different cultivation, in different life, in different tempering, in different golden body." Mahavarakana revered Buddha said indifferent 4 times consecutively. Hearing this, the Buddha light around Maitreya revered Buddha shone brightly. Within the light behind him, small worlds were born, junior apprentice brother. The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled and said, "You've just obtained the exquisite leaf scripture. Today, you've also obtained the Thunder Sound Temple's origin of Buddha light and the origin of faith. You still need to carefully comprehend them." Namo Maitreya, disciple understands. Thank you, senior brothers. Namo Maitreya Buddha's body slowly faded and finally disappeared. Even the previous shadow was completely gone. Seeing that the Maitreya Buddha World Lord was in seclusion, the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord glanced at the Mahavarakana World Lord and said, "World Lord, I remember you saying that the Maitreya Buddha descended upon the 3 continents only a few hundred years ago, right?" "Yes, it should be around 400 years ago." The Mahavarakana revered Buddha naturally knew what the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord wanted to say. With no emotions on his face, he calmly replied, "I didn't expect this junior apprentice brother to attain the Buddha fruit of the future Buddha Lord, one of the 3 supreme Buddha Lords in just 500 years of cultivation. The past world has already decayed, while the present world is still blooming. Only the future world is still budding. Among the 3 supreme Buddha Lords, only the Buddha fruit of the future Buddha Lord has the possibility of a change of Buddha's position." The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord said softly, "However, this possibility is really minuscule. I don't understand. Why did the previous Maitreya Buddha World Lord give up on this Buddha fruit? Of course, cultivation and Buddha fruit don't matter. However, to attain the golden body and live as long as the heavens, is something that all beings in the world must pursue. If the previous Maitreya Buddha World Lord didn't give it up on his own accord, then something must have happened. His 9 lifetimes of merit and karmic hindrances couldn't be tainted by him anymore. Therefore, he had no choice but to give this Buddha fruit to someone else. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha World Lord frowned slightly, and his tone changed. That's what I wanted to say. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord nodded, there are many Buddha fruits, but not many Buddha seats. The only Buddha seats that could stand on par with the Maitreya Buddha World Lord are the Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha and the Namo Vairocana Buddha. Since this junior apprentice brother had no choice but to give up on the Maitreya Buddha fruit, he would no longer have the chance to attain the three supreme Buddha seats, unless he tampered with his karmic hindrances. Chapter 4294. That's impossible. The Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord shook his head without hesitation and said, the current Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord will take all of his karmic hindrances and merits for himself, not giving him any chance. Moreover, the current Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord chose his Buddha form instead of his original form to prevent such a mistake. It also eliminated the possibility of him having such a plan. It's a pity that the great snowy mountain was shrouded by the phenomena of attaining fruition. Even with our abilities, we couldn't see what was happening inside. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord's voice became softer and softer. The Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord answered, although we don't know the process, we already know the result. I thought that Chuanzang was Ananda's reincarnation and arranged for him to attain the sutra praying in nirvana. However, I didn't expect him to be the current fleshly body of the Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord. Moreover, he had attained fruition in the great snowy mountain small exquisite temple before returning to the thunder sound temple. However, the current Namo Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord snatched his Buddha position away. His Buddha fruit was taken away, but he cultivated the Heart Sutra of Prajnaparamita and blocked Ananda's path to Buddhism. The billions of merits from sutra seeking in nirvana helped him. When he arrived at the town of longevity, it would be the time for him to attain fruition, and his merits would be worthy of the Buddha fruit. However, I'm confused. Where's Ananda? Yeah. Where's Ananda? The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord's face was filled with bitterness. The sutra praying in nirvana was originally arranged for Ananda. However, who knew that Jiang Luer, who cultivated the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra, wasn't Ananda at all? Instead, it was the Namo Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord who was born at the same time. The two World Lords had arranged a lot of things, and it could be said that they were all done for someone else. It was no wonder that the Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord, who was known to have all-seeing eyes, felt depressed. After a while, the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord asked again, the three continents of the Paramitha world suddenly appeared, and they had disappeared for the past 200 years. Who from the Holy Light world had descended upon the three continents? I'm afraid that it has something to do with the Holy Light world. I wonder if this Maitreya Buddha of the world. Although Maitreya Buddha of the world seems to be acting against my Lain temple, he is not from the Holy Light world. He has no karma with the Holy Light world at all. Mahavairakana Buddha of the world shook his head. Otherwise, I would not have given him the current exquisite leaf sutra. This unfavorable action is probably related to the attainment of pureness, right? The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord asked with his eyes closed. Mahavairakana nodded, that's right. Two rivals who were vying for the position of the future Buddha Lord had appeared in Lain Temple at the same time. There was bound to be a fierce battle. Just wait and see. After saying that, Mahavairakana closed his eyes, and the Buddhist light around him gradually weakened. Within the light behind him, the endless river of faith flowed. In the incomparably vast southern sea, Xiaohua's figure was high up in the sky. In the dark night, other than the roaring of the waves in his ears, there was only the howling of the sea breeze. There was no moon hanging high up in the sky, nor were there any specks of starlight. Layers of dark clouds covered everything that Xiaohua's eyes could see. Woo! A layer of huge waves appeared around Xiaohua's figure. After falling into the sea's surface, another row of waves surged into the distance like a mountain ridge. Several large fishes leaped out from the waves, and their pale white bellies were particularly eye-catching in the darkness. Xiaohua released his divine sense and looked around. Then, he smiled with relief, since I'm here, no one will notice me. Moreover, the night is dark and the wind is strong. It's the best time to kill people. I'll kill a few people to see. While speaking, rumble. A few faint traces of lightning appeared in the dark clouds. The sea breeze intensified again, and raindrops fell with a swish-swish sound. The storm that had been brewing for a long time finally fell. Boom. Xiaohua patted his head, and the pressure that he had been suppressing since returning to the three continents was released once again. His divine sense penetrated the dark clouds high up in the sky and touched the green-red transparent lightning that had been following Xiaohua. Boom boom boom. Just as Xiaohua released his pressure, the green-red lightning immediately roared like a group of dragons that had broken free of their reins. It enveloped an area of 10,000 li, and the stormy dark clouds were instantly destroyed by this lightning. The green-red lightning carried the will of heaven and earth, and mercilessly crossed the space and landed on Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged on the surface of the sea. Namo Maitreya Buddha. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth rose. He understood very well that his Mahayana lightning tribulation was past in the heavenly prison, and the lightning tribulation there was not complete. The ruins and chaos continent that he had experienced later were all from the upper realm, and there was no lightning tribulation. Even if there was lightning, it was different from the three continents. And now that he had returned to the three continents, he had to bear the brunt of the lightning tribulation and completely complete the transformation of the Mahayana realm. He had been flying for a long time, but he could not find the direction of the South Sea. His disciple was good. As soon as she came out, she did not hesitate at all and immediately recognized that it was the South Sea. A human and a dragon, there was no way to compare. Xiaohua was too lazy to ask Jiang Hong how she knew it was the South Sea. He only asked, Jiang Hong, do you know where the South Sea Dragon Palace is? Of course, this disciple knows. Jiang Hong pursed her lips and smiled. Although the South Sea Dragon Palace is a secret to ordinary dragons, it is nothing to my heavenly abode river. Take me there. Xiaohua ordered, just the general area is enough, you don't have to face the South Sea Dragon Palace personally. This disciple is not afraid of AO concrete now. Jiang Hong replied confidently. This is not a matter of whether you are afraid or not. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, we have left the three mainlands for more than 200 years, who knows what relationship your heavenly abode river has with the dragon palace of the four seas. If you rashly get involved, you might end up like a dog instead of a tiger. This disciple will listen to master. Jiang Hong smiled and said, this disciple is now a Fortune Gate disciple and Lu Yi's wife. In fact, this disciple has nothing to do with the heavenly abode river. It is not up to you to say that it has nothing to do with you. Your identity is there, it is easy for people to use it as an excuse to make a fuss. Xiaohua smiled and said to Jiang Hong as he flew with her. After flying for more than 10 days, they saw more than 10 pillars of water shooting out from the sea in front of them. They turned into splashes in midair and slowly fell back down. Huge whales poked their huge bodies out of the sea. Hundreds of unknown fishes, each several tens of feet long, lined up in a row and leaped out of the sea. Their fins unfolded, forming thin fleshy wings that supported the fishes as they glided through the air. Then, with a puff-puff sound, which seemed to be cheerful, came from the fishes' mouths. Jiang Hong stopped and pointed into the distance. She bowed and said, Master, about 2,000 li in that direction, you will enter the South Sea Dragon Palace's territory. This 2,000 li area is one of the South Sea Dragon Palace's layers of defense. When this disciple sneaked in, it was the Blue Waves Barren Water Grand Formation. This disciple's cultivation was shallow at that time, and after coming into contact with it, I realized that I was no match for it and escaped with the elder. I don't know if it is still the same Grand Formation. Generally speaking, there are no patrolling soldiers outside the Grand Formation. This disciple did not notice any soldiers chasing after us that day. However, once you reach the core of the Grand Formation or enter the defensive layer, there will be patrolling Yikshas patrolling the sea. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. It was also calm. He nodded and said, "When I saved you back then, I rode on the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace. The North Sea Dragon Palace also has some similar defenses." "Yes, Master." Jiang Hong said, "The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is the center of the Dragon Clan's defense of the Four Seas. Generally, the Sea Clan cannot casually approach the Dragon Palace. Even the majority of the Dragon Palace's defensive formations are Xiantian. Even if the Dragon Palace's Crown Prince enters and leaves the Dragon Palace, he cannot only rely on tokens. He can only rely on dragon boats and other weapons of the Dragon Clan. Ordinary patrolling envoys can only be sent in and out by the Dragon Palace's guards at specific times. Its powerful aura caused the sea surface to cave in. The sea breeze was also suppressed by the thunderbolt and became silent. Xiaohua's figure landed on the thunderbolt. His hands rubbed together, and streaks of crystal light fell into the thunderbolt. They turned into rays of light and rose from the edge of the thunderbolt, protecting the entire thunderbolt. Then, with a loud rumbling sound, the thunderbolt began to slowly rush into the formation. Boom! Without waiting for the thunderbolt to get close to the formation, the sharp lightning in front of the thunderbolt had already pierced into it. But, within a few miles of the thunderbolt, a trembling sound could be heard. Huge crystal-like crystals began to pile up at an extremely fast speed. Not to mention that the cultivator's body would be smashed into meat paste by these huge crystals, even the thunderbolt's lightning was extremely shaken by these crystals. The thunderbolt's lightning that acted as the vanguard was annihilated after smashing a dozen or so crystals. Interesting. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth slightly raised. The transcendence energy that was sent into the thunderbolt had begun to slow down, and the thunder pool inside the thunderbolt had already been activated, causing the thunderbolt's speed to become even faster. Boom boom. With an unstoppable force, the thunderbolt rushed into the crystal. The huge crystal was directly smashed into pieces by the thunderbolt, and these pieces were turned into pure water-type spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the thunderbolt's lightning. And, as the thunderbolt crashed into the crystal, more and more crystals were born. Within a range of thousands of miles, it condensed into a castle-like defense. This defensive castle was made of solid crystals. It seemed to be indestructible, but in front of the thunderbolt, this sturdiness was so pale. Wherever the thunderbolt rushed past, the neat crystal disintegrated, and a huge trembling sound resounded in the space of thousands of miles. Woo woo. After the thunderbolt rushed in for hundreds of miles, the surrounding space was completely filled with shattered crystals. At this time, a strange wind suddenly appeared from the void near the thunderbolt. Waves of light blue astral wind appeared on the surface of the sea. Wherever the astral wind passed, everything was frozen, whether it was the spiritual chi of heaven and earth or the shattered crystals. Even the dazzling lightning revealed a pale color. The astral wind came and went quickly, but the space within 1,000 miles turned into a solid ice ball. The thunderbolt was trapped in the ice ball. Looking at the lightning through the ice ball, it was like looking at fireworks at night. Xiaohua stood on the thunderbolt, not in a hurry to activate the thunderbolt. In his ears, after the thunderbolt was frozen, the entire thunder pool let out a roar. Thick bolts of lightning coiled around the thunderbolt like old vines, and the powerful force of the thunderbolt struggled to break free from the confinement of the astral wind. Gotcha! In front of the thunderbolt, where the huge bolts of lightning collided, a crack appeared on the huge ice ball. Once this crack appeared, it immediately spread out in all directions. In just a moment, the ice ball that was thousands of miles in size was covered with cracks. Boom! Like the eruption of magma, the lightning bolts actually turned into liquid and rushed out, exploding the entire ice ball into pieces. The thunderbolt broke through the ice ball's blockade, and like a sharp knife, it directly pierced into the center of the array. The thunderbolt only flew 100 miles forward, and the entire sea began to boil again. Large and small water columns rushed out from the bottom of the sea, mixed with many reefs, and rushed towards the thunderbolt. Boom boom. The nearly 10,000 kilograms of huge rocks with the impact of the sea waves smashed the thunderbolt, causing it to tremble again. Countless bolts of lightning sprinkled down, and the thunderbolt's pitch-black hull was revealed in the impact. Roar roar. Fine dragon patterns actually appeared on the hull of the thunderbolt. These dragon patterns covered the surface of the thunderbolt, and strange dragon roars came from the patterns. The dragon tattoo blocked all the attacks. The entire lightning bolt merely paused for a moment before it roared wildly again. Like a crazy sea beast, lightning reappeared. It dragged its swaying tail as it charged into the depths of the sea under the ambush of countless water pillars. Enemy attack, enemy attack. The impact of the thunderbolt's impact was so great that it activated the arrays within several thousand miles. The Yikshaws who were patrolling the sea turned pale with fright. They fled while sending messages to the Dragon Palace. At the same time, many shrimp soldiers and crab generals rushed out from the bottom of the sea, each holding a weapon, and lined up neatly on the surface of the sea, waiting to meet the enemy. Boom! The thunderbolt broke through the sky, and its huge hull blocked the sunlight. Its shadow covered the surface of the sea, and also some members of the oceanic race. Seeing such a huge flying boat, and the might of the flying boat that made people tremble, all the members of the oceanic race were stunned. At this time, Xiaohua's thin and tall figure flew out from the thunderbolt, and he released part of his pressure. His gaze swept through the crowd of oceanic race, and he looked into the distance, and he said indifferently, "This old man is Xiaohua of the Tao sect. Today, I have come to pay a visit to the South Sea Dragon King." Hiss. Although Xiaohua's figure was small, his aura far surpassed that of the thunderbolt. He stood in front of the thunderbolt, and he had already taken away the dazzling light of the thunderbolt. As soon as Xiaohua's words came out, under the powerful pressure, all the members of the oceanic race found it difficult to stand on the surface of the sea, and they fell into the sea one after another. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to these members of the oceanic race, and he only narrowed his eyes, looking forward. He saw that the sea inside the array was no different from the rest of the sea, but this sea was glittering with golden light, and a palace that was 10,000 miles in size was floating on the surface of the sea. This palace was very huge, and it was similar to the palace Xiaohua saw on the Dragon Island. Just the palace gate was 10,000 feet in size, and those thick pillars were like mountain peaks. In front of the palace, there was a huge palace gate, and on the high signboard that seemed to break through the sky, there were two strange characters written on it. Xiaohua's gaze swept over, and a voice in the dragon language appeared in his mind. It was the two words, South Sea. However, Xiaohua faced this imposing palace, and he only gave it a glance, and then looked at the stairs in front of the palace gate. Those stairs seemed to lead to the palace gate above the sea, but in Xiaohua's divine sense, there was a huge whirlpool that led straight to the bottom of the sea. If Xiaohua's divine sense wasn't strong enough, he might not have discovered the strangeness. After seeing all this, Xiaohua frowned. After all, he had already revealed the strength of a high-level cultivator. The Dragon King of the South Sea Dragon Palace might not come out to greet him, but the dragon generals of the Dragon Palace should have come out, right? But at this time, not even a dragon general with some strength had appeared. Humph. Xiaohua coldly snorted, and withdrew his pressure. He also withdrew the thunderbolt with a flick of his sleeve, and asked somewhat angrily, "What? Could it be that the South Sea Dragon Palace doesn't welcome this Xiao? This little one greets Dragon Master." Just as Xiaohua's voice fell, a sea patrolling Yiksha flew out from under the sea, and somewhat trembled as he kowtowed in front of this Xiao, this little one has already sent a subordinate to report to the Dragon Palace, please wait a moment Dragon Master. Dragon Master. This Xiao actually forgot. This Xiao also has the title of Dragon Master. Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, then he smiled and nodded. Not long after he came out from the Dragon Island, he fell into the heavenly prison. After tens of thousands of years of wandering, he had already forgotten this title on the Dragon Island. Is your Dragon King at home? Xiao Hua originally had a casual temperament, seeing the sea patrolling Yiksha being so respectful to him, he didn't put on airs and casually asked. The sea patrolling Yiksha hesitated for a moment, and replied, this little one doesn't know the whereabouts of my Dragon King, so I also don't know if the Dragon King is in the Dragon Palace. What about the Dragon Generals of the South Sea? Xiao Hua asked again. The sea patrolling Yiksha was even more hesitant. After all, Xiao Hua wasn't of the dragon race. Although he had the title of Dragon Master, the sea patrolling Yiksha didn't dare to tell all the secrets of the South Sea Dragon Palace to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua coldly snorted again, and suddenly raised his head, looking at the palace in the sky. Hearing Xiao Hua's anger, the sea patrolling Yiksha hurriedly bowed and said, Dragon Master please calm down, Dragon Master please calm down. Chapter 4296. Xiao Hua was not angry at the hesitation of the patrolling Yikshas. He had noticed that someone was spying on the Dragon Palace, but when he scanned the place with his divine sense, it was empty, and he did not find anything. But what Xiao Hua did not know was that at the bottom of the sea under the Dragon Palace, a bloody scene had just unfolded in a huge palace. This palace was similar to Ao Sheng's palace. There was a high platform at the front, and a huge golden table was placed on top of it. Behind the golden table was a huge mattress. This mattress was transparent, and there were many colorful crystal beads embedded in it. The light of these crystal beads lingered around each other, making it look like a beautiful mobile. There were no dragons on the high platform, only 2 armored dragons standing proudly in front of the golden table. Below the high platform was the main hall, and on both sides, there were a dozen or so small golden tables. On these golden tables, there were some spirit fruits, wine, and food. In particular, in the corner of the wine and food, there was a special fragrant exotic fruit. Behind these golden tables were some dragons, but these dragons were all lying on the ground with their eyes closed, and some saliva was flowing out of their mouths and noses. Close to the dragon tribe were armored dragon generals. Although these dragon generals were holding weapons in their hands, they were also lying weakly on the ground. There was a strange smile on their faces and their eyes were tightly shut. On the contrary, behind the pillars on both sides of the main hall stood dozens of valiant dragon generals. These dragon generals were either holding long spears or huge sabers, and each of them was exuding a shocking murderous aura. Under the murderous aura, the main hall seemed very quiet. The seawater was as transparent as crystal, and there was not even a bubble. On the 4 sides of the main hall, the huge coral trees were emitting colorful light, and some of the water plants around the coral trees were not swaying at all. Everything in the main hall seemed to be confined. 4th Prince. At this time, a voice broke the silence. It was one of the dragons on the high platform. This dragon was wearing a bright yellow armor, and the armor covered his face, making it impossible to see his appearance. Now is the time to make a decision. The other dragon, who was originally facing the golden seat, also turned around at this time. It was the 4th Prince of the South Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Qian, whom Xiao Hua had seen in the stacked jade legacy realm. Although Ao Qian's face was filled with arrogance, his eyes flashed with hesitation. His gaze swept across the 2 sides of the hall as he asked in a low voice, Senior, do we really have to do this? Is there no other way? The dragon that covered his face sneered. He looked at the golden throne and said, there is only one person in the entire South Sea Dragon Palace who can sit on this golden throne. If there were no accidents, do you think it's possible for you to sit in that position? Ao Qian smiled bitterly and said, how is that possible? This junior is only the fourth crown prince. Above me are the first crown prince, second crown prince, and third crown prince. Furthermore, royal father favors the second crown prince. Even if the first crown prince cannot sit on this golden throne, this position is not something this junior can sit on. If that's the case, why can't there be an accident? Even though what was done, the dragon race being continued to speak to Ao Qian patiently. He was in no hurry at all. We've already done so much. Do you think that there's still a way out for you? Ao Qian still smiled bitterly. Actually, this junior really didn't think that much. If not for senior, at this point, a trace of regret flashed across Ao Qian's eyes. He lowered his head and looked at the dragons lying on the ground. He didn't say anything else. The dragon race being was quick to act. He didn't hesitate at all. He smiled and said, hee hee, so the fourth crown prince only has love in his heart and doesn't have any ambitions. Then this old man has misjudged you. No matter, my sons, wake the princes up. This old man will apologize to them. Yes. The dozens of dragon generals behind the pillar all agreed. They raised their hands and were about to take out the dragon shell. Io, wait. Seeing that the dragon race was about to do it, Ao Qian panicked again. He hurriedly called out, Senior, don't be anxious, fourth crown prince, is there anything else? The dragon race said with a smile. This old man has to hurry up and settle this matter here. I still have to go back and report to the elders. This. Ao Qian smiled bitterly. It's not that this junior doesn't want to listen to senior's advice, but to really cut off the blood relatives that I grew up with. This junior really can't bear it. The dragon race nodded. You're not wrong. To tell you the truth, it's precisely because of this bit of kinship in your heart that the elders value you. If you didn't hesitate to make a move, this old man might really change his mind. Since you care about your blood relatives, this old man really has to help you. As he spoke, the dragon race raised his hand and pointed at the first crown prince and second crown prince who were lying on the ground on the left and right below the high platform. He asked, when these two princes are scheming and fighting for the golden throne, have they ever shown mercy? Never. Ao Qian shook his head. According to what this junior knows, if there's a chance between them, they definitely won't let each other live. It's also because of this that this junior has the chance to go to Dragon Island to train. Not the two of them. What about them to you? If they knew that you wanted to take the Dragon King's position, would they let you live? The dragon race asked with interest. Sigh. How is that possible? Ao Qian smiled bitterly again. Ever since this junior was sensible, I knew that the position of Dragon King did not belong to me. I definitely could not have any other thoughts. All these years, this junior has never told the other members of the Dragon clan about my thoughts. I have never dared to look at that golden throne. In the eyes of the other dragons, this junior is just a carefree prince. Even so, the first crown prince has been beating around the bush and arranging spies around this junior. Isn't that the case? They don't have any kinship in their eyes. Why do you have to worry? The dragon race laughed. What you're doing, is just what they want to do but can't do. Furthermore, the South Sea Dragon Palace will only decline in the hands of the dragon race who doesn't recognize their own kin. It will forever be at the bottom of the dragon palaces of the four seas. Only in your hands can it have a chance of glory and become the head of the dragon palaces of the four seas. Perhaps. Ao Qian's gaze was a little unfocused. Fourth Crown Prince. The dragon race spoke again. To be honest, today's opportunity is really a gift from the heavens. Your royal father went to the East Sea Dragon Palace for a banquet, and this old man just happened to be here. If this old man didn't have the elder's orders, how could the first crown prince, second crown prince, and third crown prince come together for a banquet? If this old man didn't have the deity parting flower and the fourth crown prince coincidentally had the bewitching wine, how could the three crown princes sleep so peacefully? All these coincidences. You don't think this old man is scheming, do you? That's not true. Ao Qian regained his senses and replied. This junior has only obtained the bewitching wine a few days ago. This junior has never mentioned it to anyone. Senior, you can't possibly know. Therefore, such an excellent opportunity is a gift from the heavens. If the fourth crown prince doesn't grasp it, then you won't have such an opportunity in the future. The dragon race said meaningfully. Furthermore, when other dragons have this opportunity in the future, fourth crown prince, you can't blame the heavens and accuse others. But the fourth crown prince still seemed to hesitate. The dragon race had already begun to frown. At this moment, a strange sound began to come from outside the hall. It sounded rather hurried. Who is it? The fourth crown prince, Ao Qian, was furious. He roared at the dragon general who was standing guard outside the hall. Didn't this prince say it already? No matter what happens outside, you can't disturb this prince. Yes, this subordinate understands. The vigilant dragon general agreed without hesitation. He waved his hand and a crescent-shaped dragon weapon appeared. The warning sound instantly disappeared. Fourth crown prince, could it be that you still have some misgivings? At this moment, the dragon race came to his senses and asked in a low voice. Ao Qian nodded. Indeed. Although royal father isn't in the dragon palace, if he returns and sees the three crown princes missing, senior, what do you think he'll think? The dragon race nodded. That's a problem. This isn't easy to answer. After all, you're the one who benefited the most. Anyone who guesses will put you at the top of the list of suspects. However, even if that's the case, so what? Does the South Sea Dragon King want to kill you as well? It's not impossible. Ao Qian answered with a bitter face. That's this junior's greatest misgivings. Buzz buzz. Before the dragon tribe could reply, an unusual activity was once again transmitted from outside the hall. Ao Qian's face was startled. He glanced in the direction of the hall door before looking at the dragon tribe. Finally, he opened his mouth and said, something unusual must have occurred outside the hall. Otherwise, it is impossible for this junior subordinate to repeatedly warn us. Fourth crown prince, let's go take a look. The dragon race sighed softly. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the fourth crown prince's indecisiveness. Ao Qian nodded at the dragon general outside the hall door. He clenched his claws and glanced at the three crown princes below the high platform. Clearly, he was prepared to make a move if he sensed that something was wrong. The dragon general raised his dragon claw and grabbed at the hall door. A whirlpool appeared in the jade water outside the door. A moment later, a fist-sized dragon crystal flew out of the whirlpool. The dragon general hurriedly picked it up and respectfully presented it to the fourth crown prince. Ao Qian took the dragon crystal and scanned it with his yuan will. His expression changed drastically as he cried out involuntarily, "Enemy attack! How is this possible? Someone actually took advantage of the weakness of the South Sea Dragon Palace's defensive array to attack the array." When Ao Qian said this, not only did the dragon race beside him, but even the dragon generals near the hall also changed their expressions. Today, in order to set up a trap, Ao Qian used the Dragon Palace's secret order to call back all the dragon generals within the defensive array. Firstly, he wanted to kill the dragon generals loyal to the three crown princes. Secondly, he was afraid that the three crown princes would resist. Ao Qian wanted to concentrate his forces near the hall. In his opinion, the South Sea Dragon Palace had not been attacked by enemies for tens of thousands of years. How could there be a change in half a day? However, an enemy had taken advantage of the moment when the defensive array was relaxed to attack. In that case, who was the enemy that came to invade? Chapter 4297. Ao Qian couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. His first reaction was that outside the South Sea Dragon Palace, the three princes' hidden forces had received the news and were aggressively charging in from outside. Dragon generals. Ao Qian panicked and hurriedly ordered, quickly arrange the troops and prepare to face the enemy. If Ao Qian could think of it, the dragon beside him could naturally think of it too. When he saw Ao Qian panicking, he couldn't help but despise him in his heart. However, there was no panic in his tone. Instead, he laughed and said, "Hee hee. Fourth prince, don't worry. Senior, why aren't you worried? If the three princes' forces attack, wouldn't our plan be exposed?" Ao Qian's tone was truly panicked. "Fourth prince, since there are dragon generals attacking, it means that our plan has been exposed. They want to save their masters, but what's the use of them coming? The three princes are in your hands. Even if they attack the main hall, don't they still have to listen to you? They aren't attacking to save their masters, they're clearly here to seek refuge." Hearing this, Ao Qian's expression calmed down. He rolled his eyes and nodded, "Senior's words are true. Why don't we wait a little longer? What are you waiting for? If we kill the three princes, won't their thoughts be cut off?" The dragon's brows hidden under the helmet frowned as he persuaded again. Ao Qian smiled and said, "No hurry, no hurry. A living dragon is much more useful than a dead prince. All right." Seeing that his persuasion didn't work, the dragon didn't say anything else. Shwa. Ao Qian took out a diamond-shaped dragon weapon from his bosom and blew a dragon breath on it. A watery light appeared inside the dragon weapon. The watery light fell into the sea and formed a large mirror. The situation outside the South Sea Dragon Palace was impressively visible. Sure enough, the water outside the Dragon Palace surged like a monstrous wave. A pitch-black thunderboat broke through the water. When Xiao Hua flew out from the thunderboat, Ao Qian said in surprise, "Xiao Hua. Dragon Master Xiao. Damn it, why did he come to my South Sea Dragon Palace at this time? Could it be the other elders of Dragon Island?" While speaking, Ao Qian's expression changed greatly as he looked at the dragon beside him. It's really Xiao Hua. How could he have come to the South Sea? How strange. I heard that this guy isn't. The dragon race's reaction was even more intense than Ao Qian's. His voice was filled with confusion and confusion. However, a moment later, the dragon clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Congratulations, fourth prince. Congratulations, fourth prince." Ao Qian stared blankly at the dragon, not knowing what to do, and asked curiously, "Senior, this junior. What is the good news?" The dragon said in a serious manner, "Didn't I just tell you that everything that happened today was a coincidence? It was all destined by the heavens. You're hesitating again, saying that you don't have any excuses. Now, the heavens have sent us an excuse. If the fourth prince continues to hesitate, he'll really lose the favor of the heavens." "Excuse? You mean Xiao Longshi?" Ao Qian still didn't understand. "What bullshit, Dragon Master?" The dragon coldly scolded, "What qualifications does a mere human have to be our dragon clan's Dragon Master? It's just an empty title that Ao Jia casually gave out in order to win over people's hearts and strengthen his own forces. No one in my Dragon Island will take this title seriously." Indeed. Ao Qian also didn't understand, that day, this Xiao Hua was indeed very close to the little clan elder, and he also has our dragon clan's bloodline. However, if we were to treat him as some dragon master, even this junior feels that it's inappropriate. If that five-clawed golden dragon that appeared in the folded Jade Legacy realm is our dragon master, then it's still acceptable. The five-clawed golden dragon is a dragon that Xiao Hua secretly brought in. The dragon immediately blurted out. Ao Jia said that he couldn't move the five-clawed golden dragon to work for him, so he sold a favor to Xiao Hua. He wanted to influence that five-clawed golden dragon through Xiao Hua, so that's how it is. Although Ao Qian felt that this explanation was a bit far-fetched, he didn't have the time to think too much about it. However, what does this have to do with an excuse? Fourth Prince. The dragon was helpless. He could only say clearly, "You killed the three princes, so why don't you just shift the blame to Xiao Hua?" But Ao Qian was even more confused. Xiao Hua only has the strength of the sixth level of essence power. How could he kill the first, second, and third princes in succession? This junior has no way to explain it in front of royal father. What else do you need to explain? The dragon sneered, the dead can't redress their grievances. Why do you care what his cultivation is? Ao Qian narrowed his eyes. He already understood what the dragon was talking about. Fourth Prince. The dragon waited for a moment, then asked in a drawn-out voice, "The opportunity will not come again." This junior remembers that Xiao Hua seems to have an extremely sharp magic tool. Ao Qian asked very abruptly. The dragon was startled, then shook his head and said, "This old man doesn't seem to have seen him use it." Ao Qian asked curiously, "Could it be that senior has also entered the folded jade legacy realm?" The dragon knew that he had a slip of the tongue. His face was full of embarrassment, but fortunately, he was wearing a helmet and couldn't see it. He casually replied, "Of course this old man didn't, Shua." Without waiting for him to finish speaking, he saw Ao Qian suddenly wave his hand. That dragon claw emitted a silver brilliance, and a blade that was 100 zhang long rushed out. It landed on the left side of the high platform, right between the neck of the first prince who had collapsed on the ground. Pooh! With a sound, the first prince's dragon head flew out. That dragon blood spurted out, instantly dyeing the surrounding ground completely red. The surrounding seawater also began to surge with a bloody light. That dragon clearly didn't expect Ao Qian to suddenly make a move. He was actually startled for a moment, then stretched out his dragon claw and raised a finger. He smiled and said, "Fourth Prince has made this old man have a whole new level of respect for you." Ao Qian looked at the ground indifferently. The first prince's dragon head was wearing a slightly small crown. The pearls on the crown were scattered and soaked in thick dragon blood. The dragon's eyes on the dragon's head were actually open at this moment, as if he had died with grievances. Humph! Ao Qian coldly snorted, and a dragon-slaying saber appeared in his dragon claw. Then, with a flash of saber light, the other two dragons behind the gold table were personally killed by him. The thick dragon blood rushed into the seawater with the dragon's soul. Gradually, the dragon's soul faded and disappeared, but the dragon blood filled the surroundings of the seawater. "Clean it up." Ao Qian put away the dragon-slaying saber and ordered, "Kill all three of their personal dragon generals." Then, just as he said this, Ao Qian suddenly froze, because he saw Xiao Hua looking at him from the mirror. That gaze seemed to be able to see through everything. "What's wrong?" The dragon beside him was also happy that Ao Qian was so nimble. Hearing him suddenly stop, he couldn't help but ask curiously. Ao Qian blinked. When he looked again, Xiao Hua had already looked elsewhere, as if his gaze had just swept past by occasionally. "Nothing." Ao Qian responded, and then ordered the dragon generals, "Clean it up, we will grandly welcome the dragon master of my dragon race here." "Yes." The dragon generals quickly cleaned up, and the dragon said with a smile, "Looks like, this old man is no longer needed here. This old man will take his leave now. I hope that when this old man sees the fourth prince again, the fourth prince has already fulfilled his wish." "Thank you, senior." Ao Qian bowed and said with a smile, "Senior, please return to Dragon Island. Please report to the elder that if this junior sits on this golden chair, I will definitely respect the elder's wishes." Good. The dragon helped Ao Qian up and nodded in response. Without wasting any time, he led some dragon generals out from the side of the hall. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept across the light and shadow of the South Sea Dragon Palace on the surface of the sea and didn't find anything strange. Naturally, he looked at the stairs of the Dragon Palace and said to the sea patrolling Yiksha, "Looks like, the old Dragon King doesn't welcome this old man as an uninvited guest." "No, no." The sea patrolling Yiksha hurriedly said with a smile, "Not to mention that Senior is a Dragon Master, my South Sea Dragon Palace should welcome you respectfully. Even if ordinary human cultivators come to my South Sea Dragon Palace, my Dragon King will also treat them with respect. My Dragon King hasn't come out for a long time. I'm afraid that there is something important in the hall, right?" "All right." Xiao Hua responded faintly and didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua came this time, in addition to borrowing the teleportation array of the South Sea Dragon Palace to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace, he also had an extremely important purpose, which was to get the last metal and wood magnetism from the South Sea Dragon Palace. Back then, Xian gave Xiao Hua the refining method of the 5 elements wishful heaven cudgel, and at the same time gave Xiao Hua the location of several magnetism. This South Sea Dragon Palace had the metal and wood magnetism that Xiao Hua needed. Since he had a request, Xiao Hua had no choice but to lower his head slightly. He pondered for a moment, put his hands behind his back, and stood on the surface of the sea, waiting quietly. Who would have thought that after Xiao Hua stood there for half a cup of tea's time, he didn't see the South Sea Dragon King come out, and even a dragon general didn't appear. Xiao Hua's face gradually turned cold, and the sea patrolling Yiksha also felt that something was wrong. "Ha ha ha." Xiao Hua laughed and said loudly, "Since the old dragon doesn't welcome this old man, then this old man has no choice but to force his way in." "Senior." The sea patrolling Yiksha hurriedly shouted, "How about Senior wait for a while, Junior will." Without waiting for the sea patrolling Yiksha to finish speaking, Xiao Hua's figure had already landed on the steps of the light shadow of the South Sea Dragon Palace. Woo-woo. A strong whirlwind blew out from the dragon gate on the light shadow, and hundreds of dragon scales flashed with golden light as they fell along with the whirlwind, wrapping around Xiao Hua's body. Seeing this, the sea patrolling Yiksha couldn't help but feel anxious, because he knew where the dragon scales fell. If the one who came was a dragon, the dragon scales would trigger the restriction of the Dragon Palace, opening the passage to the Dragon Palace under the sea. But if the one who came was not a dragon, these dragon scales would turn into sharp blades and kill the one who came. Of course, in the eyes of the sea patrolling Yiksha, these dragon scales absolutely couldn't hurt Xiao Hua, but these dragon scales would successfully ignite the anger of Xiao Hua who had lost his patience. At that time. Thinking of this, the sea patrolling Yiksha didn't dare to think too much, he only wanted to rush over and block Xiao Hua. Chapter 4298. Dong. At the critical moment, the golden bells rang in unison, and hundreds of conch girls flew out of the light and shadow dragon palace. These conch girls either struck the bells, played the zither, or blew the bamboo flute. In the sound of the zither and bamboo, the whirlwind and dragon scales that rushed up disappeared. Looking at the stairs again, a whirlpool appeared, and a dozen dragon generals stepped out. The one with the crown in front was the 4th prince, Ao Qian. When Ao Qian saw Xiao Hua, he immediately bowed and shouted, "Junior Ao Qian greets Dragon Master Xiao." "Hee, so it's the 4th prince. I saw you in the folded jade legacy realm. No need to be too polite." How could Xiao Hua let Ao Qian really bow? He hurriedly raised his hand to support his body and smiled. Ao Qian's face was filled with shame as he said, "Junior is really sorry. That day in the folded jade legacy realm, I actually misunderstood Dragon Master. If it wasn't for Dragon Master that day, it would have been impossible for us to come out of the legacy realm. When Junior came out of the legacy realm, I deliberately waited outside for half a day, wanting to apologize and thank Dragon Master in person. Later, when I heard that Senior became the dragon master of my dragon race, Junior was happier than anyone else. Junior had always hoped that Dragon Master would come to my South Sea Dragon Palace. I really didn't expect that Junior's dream would come true today. I really have to thank the heavens. While speaking, Ao Qian was about to bow again. Looking at the surprise on Ao Qian's face, it really didn't seem fake. Xiao Hua's heart warmed as he helped Ao Qian up and said, "Fourth Prince, you don't have to be too polite. There's no need to say thank you. That day, I was also forced into a dangerous situation and had no choice but to risk my life." Ao Qian smiled and said, "You don't have to say thank you, but an apology is necessary. Junior wronged Dragon Master. If I can't apologize, Junior won't be able to sleep and eat in peace." Xiao Hua was helpless and could only let him bow a few times. Then, he helped him up and said, "The situation that day was unclear, so it's normal that Fourth Prince didn't understand. Now that the truth has been revealed, we don't need to say any more." "Yes, yes." Ao Qian stood up, looked at Xiao Hua, and smiled happily again. "It's only been a few hundred years, Senior's cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. Junior is really envious. Hee, lucky, lucky." Xiao Hua smiled and didn't say much. He looked behind Ao Qian and said, "Dragon King is in the palace. This Xiao has something to trouble you with." Ao Qian replied, "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Dragon Master Xiao. Father has gone to the East Sea Dragon Palace for a banquet. He's not in the Dragon Palace right now." Xiao Hua was quite disappointed and asked, "Then when will your Majesty Dragon King return?" "Not necessarily," Ao Qian said. "It could be 10 days or 10 years. This." Xiao Hua was a bit hesitant. He didn't know if he should let the Fourth Prince send a message to Ao Concrete. After all, the matter he asked the South Sea Dragon King for was not a small matter. Seeing Xiao Hua's hesitation, Ao Qian hurriedly smiled and said, "Dragon Master Xiao, since you've come to my South Sea Dragon Palace, you should let this junior do his duty as a host. If Master Long has anything to say, you can tell this junior. If this junior can make a decision, this junior will work for Senior. If this junior can't make a decision, then this junior can send a message to Royal Father and even ask Royal Father to come back." Yes, Fourth Prince's words are reasonable. This Xiao pondered for a moment and nodded. This Xiao thinks. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, Ao Qian interrupted him and asked with a smile, Dragon Master Xiao, this is not the place to talk. How about Master Long follow this junior to the main hall of the Dragon Palace? This junior will first set up a banquet to entertain Senior. How about we talk while drinking?" "Very good." Xiao Hua didn't doubt him and nodded. "Master Long, please." Ao Qian was overjoyed. He turned around and signaled Xiao Hua to go first. Xiao Hua also smiled slightly and raised his hand. "Fourth Prince, please." "All right, this junior will lead the way." Fourth Prince said politely and took the lead to step on the waves of the whirlpool. Xiao Hua released his divine sense and took a rough look. He also stepped on the waves. The dragon generals brought by the Fourth Prince followed behind Xiao Hua. The walls of the passage formed by the whirlpool were rotating seawater. The rotation of the seawater caused a huge rumbling sound. Just like a transmission passage, the rotation of the seawater sent Xiao Hua and Ao Qian to the bottom of the sea. Even before walking out of the whirlpool, Xiao Hua already saw that several thousand li of the bottom of the sea was covered by layers upon layers of palaces. These palaces were similar in style to the palaces on the Dragon Island. They were all abnormally simple and unadorned. However, there was a kind of luxury in this unadorned simplicity. The so-called splendor of gold and jade was nothing more than a kind of vulgarity in this place. At the end of the passage was a huge palace with the same light and shadow as the surface of the sea. The two words, Southern Sea, were written on the signboard. The gate of this palace wasn't open. Instead, there was a gate on the left side of the gate that couldn't be considered small. In front of that gate, there were also members of the water race standing respectfully. Xiao Hua followed Ao Qian and landed. His gaze swept across the entire palace and his brows slightly wrinkled. This palace had no less than 9 palace gates. Other than the huge golden gate in the middle, the 2 sides were vermilion yellow gates. He didn't know what material the gates were made of. The vermilion yellow surface concealed strange dragon characters. Although the dragon characters were in the form of characters, in Xiao Hua's eyes, they actually transformed into hundreds of huge dragons coiling in front of the palace gates. A kind of majestic dragon might pounced on Xiao Hua from inside the palace gates. Xiao Hua naturally didn't care about this dragon might. His slightly wrinkled brows were also seen by Ao Qian. Ao Qian hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "I'll let Dragon Teacher Xiao know that Dragon Teacher has graced my Southern Sea Dragon Palace with your presence. My Southern Sea Dragon Palace naturally has to open the gate in the middle to welcome you. However, my royal father isn't in the palace. This junior also doesn't have the qualifications to open the Dragon Palace. Therefore, I can only inconvenience Dragon Teacher to use the palace gates that my Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas normally uses to welcome seniors." Xiao Hua understood. He casually waved his hand and said with a smile, "No need to be polite. This old man dislikes empty formalities the most. Just do as you please." However, after a moment, Xiao Hua still asked curiously, "Who usually opens the gate in the middle?" Ao Qian smiled and said, "Naturally, it's opened by seniors who have already reached the highest realm in the 3 continents. For example, the Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Palace, the 3 Buddhist Lords of the Thunder Temple, the 7 Great Sages of the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, and the various Elders of the Dragon Island. Oh, of course, other than the realm, when respected seniors come, it will also be opened. For example, Dragon Teacher Xiao. There's no need to mention this old man." Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. "This old man only has an empty title. How can the Dragon Teacher of my Dragon Clan be an empty title?" Ao Qian raised his hand and asked Xiao Hua to leave first. He followed behind Xiao Hua and replied with narrowed eyes, "If Dragon Teacher Xiao hadn't done a great favor to my Dragon Clan in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, how could the various elders of the Dragon Island bestow the title of Dragon Teacher to Senior? Perhaps Senior isn't of my Dragon Clan and doesn't know the origin of the title of Dragon Teacher. The so-called Dragon Teacher is the master of all of my Dragon Clan. No matter where Senior goes, my Dragon Clan has to treat Senior as a master and disciple. We must listen to Senior's words and can't refute them." Ao Qian had the intention to flatter. He carefully accompanied Xiao Hua along the way and led Xiao Hua to the previous main hall. At this time, the main hall had already been cleaned up and there was no trace of blood. As Xiao Hua walked into the main hall, he immediately saw the golden throne at the head of the hall. That enormous throne was carved with countless strange patterns, and a familiar desolate aura was emitted from those patterns, directly filling the entire main hall. If Xiao Hua hadn't fallen into the heavenly prison and saw this desolate relic, he would definitely sigh and be envious. He might even covet it in his heart. But at this time, after plundering the mysterious desolate continent for 100 years, Xiao Hua's space was already filled with treasures. This golden seat was no longer in his eyes. However, the patterns on the golden seat clearly had hidden dragon patterns. It was unknown how many times the dragon kings of the past had blessed it with the heavenly dragon language technique. This was the fundamental reason why Xiao Hua was moved. Ao Qian saw Xiao Hua's narrowed eyes and secretly despised him in his heart. He raised his hand and invited Xiao Hua to sit in the guest seat below the high platform. He accompanied Xiao Hua on the opposite main seat and said with a smile, "Dragon Teacher Xiao, my royal father isn't here. This junior will host a banquet on behalf of royal father to entertain senior. If there's anything wrong, please forgive me." "Thank you, fourth prince." Xiao Hua knew that the dragon race was similar to the human race in some aspects of etiquette. Without a banquet, they couldn't talk, so he nodded slightly. Not long after, the dragon palace servants placed the banquet. The golden table in front of Xiao Hua was already covered with many delicacies. Although Xiao Hua was already a Mahayana cultivator, there were many things in front of him that he hadn't seen before. In the end, two graceful shell girls danced with their shells. Their bodies were faintly visible in the transparent shells, looking particularly alluring. The shell girls leisurely came from outside the main hall. They swam through the seawater in the main hall, emitting a warm fragrance that seeped into one's heart. When they swam in front of Xiao Hua, they lowered their heads slightly and took out a strange flower with their mouth. This strange flower only had 3 petals, and these 3 petals were almost transparent. Hidden in the transparent flower were dozens of patterns of different colors. These patterns were also strange, and each one was like an undetectable flood dragon. The strange flower swayed slightly in the mouth of the shell girl, and the dozens of flood dragons reflected the light of the overflowing seawater. It was as if dozens of flood dragons were flying around the shell girl. A strange look appeared in Xiao Hua's eyes. He didn't know what the banquet would do with these flowers. However, looking at Ao Qian across from him, there was also a shell girl presenting flowers. Moreover, Ao Qian was looking at the dragon shadow in front of him with interest. Xiao Hua felt relieved. Sure enough, when the shell girl placed the flower on a crystal plate to the right of the golden table, the fragrance of the flower enveloped the delicacies. An appetizing fragrance wafted out from the delicacies, and it was even more alluring than before. After the shell girl waved her shell again and left seductively, Ao Qian moved his gaze away from the shell girl's back. He glanced at Xiao Hua and then glanced at the spirit-parting flower in front of Xiao Hua. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand and picked up a huge wine bottle. He gestured, "Dragon Teacher Xiao, Junior salutes Senior on behalf of my father. Welcome to my Southern Sea Dragon Palace." Chapter 4299. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Qian, then looked at the wine bottle in front of him and said with a bitter smile, "Fourth Prince, this old man doesn't usually like to drink, and this wine bottle seems to be used by the dragon race. If this old man drinks it, won't he be drunk in the main hall? This is Junior's negligence." Ao Qian was a bit embarrassed and hurriedly scolded, "Useless servant, why aren't you changing it for Dragon Master?" "Yes, yes." A conch girl hurriedly walked out from behind the pillar, holding a jade plate in her hand. Inside the jade plate were a few crystal cups the size of a fist. These cups were also transparent, and there were some different colored spots inside. These spots were shining brightly, and they were still the bright stars in the night. The conch girl carefully placed the crystal cup in front of Xiao Hua, then respectfully picked up the wine bottle and poured it for Xiao Hua. Only then did she withdraw and stand behind the pillar. "Dragon Master Xiao, please." Ao Qian stood up, raised the wine bottle, and said respectfully, "All right." Xiao Hua helplessly raised his cup. After all, this was the etiquette of the South Sea Dragon Palace. He didn't like to drink, but drinking a few cups was right. Seeing Xiao Hua raise his cup, Ao Qian's eyes smiled. He raised the wine bottle first and said, "Junior will drink first." Dragons were several times better at drinking than cows. Xiao Hua had seen Ao Jing's straightforwardness on the dragon boat a few years ago. At this time, Ao Qian was not inferior to Ao Jing at all. The huge wine bottle was swallowed in a few mouthfuls, and there was no change in expression on his face. Xiao Hua also faintly smiled, raised his cup, and drank the bewitching wine. The wine entered his mouth, and his nose smelled the fragrance of the deity parting flower. Xiao Hua's eyes slightly shook, and he actually had a kind of illusion where many shell girls fell from the sky. At this time, Ao Qian's somewhat blurred voice came again, "Dragon Master Xiao, this is my South Sea Dragon Palace's special Xiao Xin wine. It has a different flavor, and it has always been brought by father for the seniors to enjoy. Today, Junior borrowed Senior's arrival and also basked in some glory. Ao Qian's voice was actually a bit ethereal. Xiaohua saw that the shell girls in the illusion were beginning to have some unbearable actions, so he hurriedly used a secret technique. When the illusion in front of him disappeared, a kind of indescribable sobriety and a feeling of his bloodline gushing out from his body. Xiaohua's bloodline power, which hadn't improved for a long time, actually had a very small improvement. Oh. This is good stuff. Xiaohua looked at the bewitching wine on the golden table with some astonishment. He firmly believed Ao Qian's words. When Xiaohua raised his head to look at Ao Qian, he saw that Ao Qian was actually slumped behind the golden table. His eyes were somewhat dazed as he stared at the clear seawater. There was even saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was as if he had entered the illusion that Xiaohua had seen before. Hee, this little guy seems to be gluttonous too. Xiaohua smiled and thought to himself, it's clearly a good thing that the South Sea Dragon King brought to entertain his distinguished guests, yet he actually wanted to steal it. This can be considered a lesson. As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand again, picked up another cup of bewitching wine, and drank it in one gulp. Xiaohua didn't like to drink, but if there was good wine that could stimulate the power of his bloodline, how could he let it go? When Xiaohua was drinking by himself, Ao Qian was dumbfounded. Although the deity parting flower and bewitching wine were aimed at the dragon race, they also had some effect on human cultivators, especially on the physical body. The human race had no way to compare with the dragon race. Ao Qian was originally waiting for Xiaohua to collapse on the golden table before taking action. But seeing Xiaohua drinking cup after cup as if nothing had happened, he was truly puzzled. He couldn't help but secretly criticize in his heart, damn it, is this still a human? Even if he's a dragon, I'm afraid he would be lying down right now, right? Could it be that this Xiaohua's cultivation has already reached the peak of the 9th level of essence energy? Thinking of this, Ao Qian couldn't help but think of another possibility. Of course, it was only an instant before this thought flashed through Ao Qian's mind. After all, when Xiaohua showed off his might in the stacked Jade Legacy realm, he was only around the 6th or 7th level of essence energy. On the turning dragon platform, he was even besieged by the dragon race of the Four Seas. Ao Qian didn't believe that a human cultivator could cultivate to the 9th level of essence energy in a short 200 years. In fact, even if Xiaohua revealed his strength around the 8th level of essence energy, Ao Qian was still a little surprised. However, at this time, Ao Qian's heart was filled with thoughts of how to frame Xiaohua. The higher Xiaohua's strength was, the more advantageous it was for Ao Qian. It would be easier for him to explain the grievous news of the 3 princes being killed to the South Sea Dragon King. Therefore, Ao Qian didn't have time to think about anything else. Of course, Ao Qian was also extremely glad that he didn't immediately make trouble after Xiaohua drank the bewitching wine. Instead, he chose to observe. Otherwise, his entire plan would be disrupted. After Xiaohua finished drinking the several crystal cups on the golden table, the conch girl beside him hurriedly walked out, wanting to refill Xiaohua's cup. Xiaohua waved his hand and smiled, no need. Yes. The conch girl didn't dare to say anything more, hurriedly lowering her head and retreating. However, anything with spiritual effects would always have a limited effect. After Xiaohua drank a few cups, the effect of the bewitching wine's bloodline power was almost negligible. Xiaohua was disdainful of merely tasting spiritual wine. His gaze landed on the deity parting flower. Seeing Xiaohua looking at the deity parting flower, Ao Qian no longer dared to pretend to be drunk. He slightly opened his eyes and looked at Xiaohua with astonishment. Dragon Master Xiao, you. Seeing Ao Qian wake up, Xiaohua shifted his gaze from the deity parting flower to Ao Qian and smiled, many thanks, 4th Prince. This wine is very good. It will be very helpful for this old man's cultivation. Damn it. Ao Qian was sweating profusely. He almost jumped up. The bewitching wine and deity parting flower that could make an 8th grade elemental power dragon faint, in the mouth of Xiao Hua, a human, only had 2 words to describe it as, very good. Moreover, it was very helpful for this person's cultivation. Ao Qian felt like he was about to collapse. He was a bit regretful of his own calculations. Because the development of the matter had just started, he felt like it was about to break out of his control. If Dragon Master Xiao likes it, Junior will prepare. At this point, Ao Qian awkwardly stopped and said in a low voice, Junior secretly used Royal Father's wine. I'm afraid I can't give Senior more to take away. Also, I ask Senior to keep this a secret for this Junior. Huh, don't worry. Xiao Hua laughed, this old man has received benefits. Why would I expose your shortcomings for no reason? Very good, very good. While Ao Qian smiled, he began to regret his previous actions. Without Xiao Hua as a scapegoat, he really couldn't explain to the Southern Sea Dragon King. He had to find another reason. At this time, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. 4th Prince, this old man came to the Southern Sea Dragon Palace today to discuss 2 matters. Oh, Senior, please speak. Ao Qian was obviously a bit absent-minded and asked casually. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Qian's flickering eyes and felt a bit bitter in his heart. He knew that this time, he came for nothing. The Southern Sea Dragon King wasn't here. Not to mention the metal, wood, and magnetism. Even the matter of borrowing the teleportation channel, this 4th Prince probably couldn't make the decision, right? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua looked around in bewilderment and asked, 4th Prince, where did the Southern Sea Dragon Palace's Crown Prince and the others go? Ao Qian quivered and hurriedly collected his thoughts. He smiled apologetically and said, my royal brothers have some matters that are not within the Dragon Palace. As for Senior's matter, I'm afraid this Junior can't make the decision. Seeing that Ao Qian's attitude was different from when they first met, Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have drunk this so-called spiritual wine. Now that he had gained the other party's face, he was embarrassed to fall out with him. Forcefully using the teleportation channel might be a bit troublesome. Thus, Xiao Hua said indifferently, what? Could it be that the 4th Prince won't even let this old man say what he wants to say? I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. Ao Qian hurriedly replied, this Junior was really happy to see Senior earlier, so my blood surged and I agreed without thinking. But now that this Junior thinks about it. Oh, Senior, do you have something to say? Tell me first. If possible, this Junior will take the risk and agree. And, this old man thanks the 4th Prince first. Although Xiao Hua was dissatisfied with Ao Qian's attitude, he had always been amenable to persuasion and not coercion. He nodded slightly and said, this old man wants to use the South Sea Dragon Palace's teleportation channel to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace. I don't know if the 4th Prince can make the decision. Ao Qian shook his head slightly. This teleportation channel is a secret of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. Ordinary sea race and human race don't know about it. Since Dragon Master Xiao knows about this and came to my South Sea Dragon Palace, this Junior wants to help Senior and is willing to help Senior. However, the token to activate the teleportation channel is in the hands of my royal father. This Junior doesn't have it, so, this Junior can't help Senior. Senior, please forgive me. Xiao Hua naturally didn't need any token to activate the teleportation channel. However, facing Ao Qian's attitude as a junior, Xiao Hua really couldn't fall out with him and make things difficult for this respectful junior. Forget it. Xiao Hua stood up and flicked his sleeves. He stood up and said, this old man will take his leave for now. When your Dragon King returns in a few days, this old man will come again to visit. Senior, don't be anxious. Ao Qian really couldn't bear to let Xiao Hua, the scapegoat, leave so easily. He hurriedly stood up and said, Senior, please have some food and wine first. Tell me about the other matter. Perhaps this junior can make the decision then. While speaking, Ao Qian raised his head and looked outside the main hall. His gaze changed. The dragon generals outside the main hall were already on guard after receiving Ao Qian's signal. They should be Ao Qian's backup plan from before. Xiao Hua didn't care about these dragon generals. He looked at Ao Qian and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "This old man heard that your South Sea Dragon Palace has a metal and wood magnetism. Is there such a thing? Metal and wood magnetism?" Ao Qian stared blankly. Suddenly, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He hurriedly said, "Senior, please take a seat." So Senior came for that thing. What? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and said curiously, "Even the fourth prince can't make the decision on the teleportation channel. Can this metal and wood magnetism make the decision?" Chapter 4300. No, Dragon Master Xiao has misunderstood. Ao Qian's reaction was extremely fast. His thoughts turned quickly, and he smiled apologetically. This junior can't decide on the matter of metal and wood magnetism. However, this junior knows that this item is quite a headache for my royal father. If senior has the means to take it away, I'm sure my royal father will be happy. This junior is naturally willing to help you with such a mutually beneficial matter. Oh. Xiao Hua stopped and sat down. He asked with interest, "What do you mean?" Ao Qian smiled. Senior is a Taoist cultivator. At this point, Ao Qian suddenly stared blankly for a moment, and he glanced at Xiao Hua with a strange expression. Only now did Ao Qian realize that Xiao Hua was a Tao sect cultivator, and being able to cultivate to the 6th or 7th grade of origin energy in the 3 continents was already extremely rare. How could there be a cultivator like Xiao Hua who had cultivated to the 8th grade of origin energy? However, Ao Qian was only surprised for a moment. He threw this thought aside and explained, "Senior must know that the physiques of the human race belong to the 5 elements. Although my dragon race doesn't cultivate the 5 elements, my physique and dragon arts are mixed with the 5 elements. Among the dragon palaces of the 4 seas, the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is metal, the Western Sea Dragon Palace's nature is fire, the Northern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is wood, and my Southern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is earth. Within the 4 seas, according to the different attributes of the dragon palaces, there are many natural spiritual items of the 5 elements. The metal and wood magnetism shouldn't be within the jurisdiction of my Southern Sea Dragon Palace. However, this magnetism is not far from my Southern Sea Dragon Palace. This item interferes with the cultivation of my Southern Sea Dragon Palace's dragon race. My royal father wanted to ask the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace and the Northern Sea Dragon Palace for help several times to take away this metal and wood magnetism. However, I'm sure Senior also understands that within the magnetism, the items of the 5 elements must be restricted. My 3 uncles and my royal father tried to do everything they could to no avail. Later on, they simply used some secret techniques of the dragon race to simply cover up this magnetism and ignored it. At this point, Ao Qian was somewhat excited. He stood up and said, "Senior, please wait a moment. Junior will send a message to my royal father. If possible, Senior can use the transportation channel." "Great." Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Then I'll have to trouble 4th Prince." "It's not troublesome at all," Ao Qian said respectfully. "It's my honor to be able to do something for Xiao Longsha." With that said, Ao Qian walked to the door of the main hall. He did not leave the main hall. He took out a long bay and handed it to the dragon general on duty at the door. "Go quickly. Send this message to the Dragon King. If he has any orders, report to this king immediately." "Yes, 4th Prince." The dragon general took the dragon shell and hurriedly left, not daring to be negligent. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Qian's back and used his heavenly eye divine ability. He didn't hear any message from Ao Qian, so he didn't suspect anything. Then, Ao Qian turned back and accompanied Xiao Hua to talk and eat some delicacies. After 2 hours, a dragon general hurriedly returned the long bay to Ao Qian. He reported, "The Dragon King's order has arrived. Fourth Marquis, please verify it." "Yes." Ao Qian took the long bay and looked at it. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "You can leave now. Arrange the carriage." "Yes, this subordinate understands." The dragon general hurriedly left after receiving the order. Ao Qian turned around and bowed with a smile on his face. "Congratulations, Xiao Longshi. Father is very happy to receive this junior's message. However, the matter at the East Sea Dragon Palace is not over yet. Therefore, he asked this junior to accompany senior and wait for his return. Of course, if senior can settle this matter in advance, this junior can also gain the favor of my father. Oh, senior, please rest assured. The matter of using the transmission channel is not a problem at all." He, good. Xiao Hua knew Ao Qian's mood. In fact, he was even more excited. He was more eager to obtain the medal and would elemental magnetism than Ao Qian. After all, this was the last elemental magnetism to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven cudgel. "Thank you, senior." "Thank you." Ao Qian hurriedly bowed. He looked at the delicacies on the golden table and smiled. "If possible, can senior go now? After this junior succeeds, this junior will organize a banquet to celebrate senior success." "Of course." Xiao Hua nodded with a smile. "Please." Ao Qian was very excited. He raised his hand and invited Xiao Hua to go first. Xiao Hua walked out from behind the golden table and arrived outside the palace gate. He saw a huge whale dragging something that looked like a dragon boat had stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Senior, please." Ao Qian was still very respectful. He invited Xiao Hua to board the chariot first. Xiao Hua was not polite. He floated up and landed on the chariot. However, the chariot was so big that Xiao Hua felt small standing on it. Ao Qian boarded the chariot and said very considerately with a smile, "Senior, I've wronged you. This boat doesn't have a seat that humans usually use." No matter, no matter." Xiao Hua was also in a very good mood. He waved his hand and said indifferently. Then, the giant whale dragged the chariot into the depths of the dragon palace. At the same time, dozens of armored dragon generals surrounded the chariot to protect it. Xiao Hua had not released his divine sense before. Furthermore, the dragon formation of the South Sea Dragon Palace had sealed off a portion of his divine sense. So Xiao Hua only knew that the South Sea Dragon Palace was huge. As for how huge it was, he had no idea. But after the giant whale had been swimming for over 2 hours, there were still many palaces under the chariot. Xiao Hua was completely speechless. He sighed and said, "Fourth Prince, people often say that the richest place in the world is not the immortal palace, but the dragon palaces of the 4 seas. It seems that it really is true. Although I haven't seen anything particularly precious, looking at such a huge palace, I'm afraid there isn't anything bigger in this world, right? The East Sea Dragon Palace." Ao Qian replied without the slightest hesitation. "Senior must have never been to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Otherwise, you wouldn't say that." Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed. He looked at Ao Qian's spirited face and replied, "Indeed, other than Dragon Island, this is the first time I've been to the dragon race's territory. Dragon Island is the holy land of my dragon race. My dragon palace of the 4 seas naturally cannot compare. Furthermore, Dragon Island is not as luxurious as my dragon palace of the 4 seas." Ao Qian said with a smile. Just as he said that, a colorful halo appeared in the seawater 1,000 kilometers in front of him. This halo was like a spinning wheel of light, sprinkling layers of colors on the seawater, the reefs, and the fishes swimming in the seawater. The deep-sea fishes were originally colorful. Now that they were reflected in this halo, and were frightened by the whale and the dragon generals, they swam frantically. It was as if a huge colorful whirlwind was blowing at the bottom of the sea. It was exceptionally beautiful. Senior, the place where the halo is located is the metal and wood elemental magnetism. There is a dragon formation confinement on it. The successive dragon kings of my South Sea Dragon Palace would use the heavenly dragon language technique to strengthen the dragon formation. Ao Qian raised his hand and pointed at the halo in the distance and explained, when Royal Father sent back the order, he already said that this junior should take the token of the Dragon Palace so that senior can enter the dragon formation. This junior has already ordered my subordinates to prepare. As he spoke, Ao Qian spat out a mouthful of dragon breath at a part of the carriage. Several dragon patterns appeared on it, and then a dragon-shaped token that was more than 10 feet in size flew out from the dragon patterns. Ao Qian looked at such a large token and raised his hand. The token flew in front of Xiao Hua and smiled, "Thank you for your trouble, senior." Seeing Ao Qian cover his mouth and laugh, Xiao Hua also laughed. His instinctive wariness lessened a bit. He raised his hand and grabbed, causing the space near the token to suddenly distort. That space, along with the token, shrank and landed in Xiao Hua's hand. He said, "Isn't this enough, senior?" Ao Qian was shocked. How could a cultivator on the verge of the 8th grade of essence force achieve this level of spatial control? Only now did Ao Qian suddenly realize that Xiao Hua's strength was unfathomable. What he saw before was only the tip of the iceberg. However, since it had already come to this, how could Ao Qian retreat? A lie needed 100 lies to make up for it. Today, Ao Qian had told more than one lie. Other than making Xiao Hua the scapegoat, he really had no other way out. Ao Qian clenched his teeth and praised, "Senior's cultivation is really powerful." Junior remembers that in the stacked Jade Legacy realm, Senior was only around the 6th grade of essence force, right? Everyone will improve. This old man may have had more opportunities than others. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. However, compared to the Great Tao, these are insignificant. Senior's teachings are right. Ao Qian had made up his mind. His face quickly returned to normal, and he said respectfully, "This junior may not have senior's perseverance. It's difficult for me to cultivate a great ability. The dragon race is different from the human race. Their paths are different. Fourth Prince doesn't need to envy this old man." Xiao Hua said casually as he looked at the halo approaching. He placed his attention in the distance and didn't notice the faint smile on Ao Qian's face. The place where the halo rose from still looked like a palace, but this palace was very different from the others. Looking from a distance, the palace was divided into 7 different parts, each part forming a tower of different height. These 7 tower-shaped palaces were connected by some dragon-like corridors. Not only were these long corridors piled up with glittering corals and other objects, but they were also inlaid with strange shellfish and dragon scales. These different decorations were connected by thin dragon patterns. Between the light and the ripples, it was as if a giant dragon was cruising. The 7 tower-shaped palaces were sparkling and translucent, emitting 7 different colors. These lights not only rushed to the water area where the palaces were located, but also flickered in the corridors between them. It looked gorgeous and colorful. "It's really beautiful." Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and praised. That praise came from the bottom of his heart. Damn it, everyone says that there are countless treasures in the Dragon Palace. But from this palace in a corner of the Dragon Palace, how many crystal stones did it cost? Since the North Sea Dragon Palace has an auction and arena, the South Sea Dragon Palace should also have one. Their sea crystals are really endless. Chapter 4301. Hee, Senior, don't underestimate this place. Although it looks beautiful, it's extremely dangerous. Ao Qian said with a smile. Normally, we won't come close to this place. I hope that after this old man leaves, the fourth prince will often come here to enjoy this beautiful scenery. Xiao Hua said with a smile. At this moment, the giant whale had stopped. Its body, which was larger than a mountain range, trembled a few times. An undercurrent emerged from the bottom of the sea and rushed to the dragon palace. Senior. Ao Qian said respectfully. This place is already very close to the Seven Stars Palace. This junior can't get any closer. Senior only needs to hold the token and get close to the Seven Stars Palace. This junior can only wait here. When my father returns from the East Sea Dragon Palace, our South Sea Dragon Palace will celebrate Senior's achievement. Hehe, no need to be so polite. Xiao Hua said with a smile. It's just a small matter. Senior's small matter solved a problem for our South Sea Dragon Palace for who knows how many years. This junior thanks Senior on behalf of my father. Ao Qian was very polite today. He coaxed Xiao Hua to rush to the Seven Stars Palace. Xiao Hua knew what Ao Qian was thinking. Ao Qian wanted him to deal with this troublesome matter before the Dragon King of the South Sea returned, so that he could show off his achievements in front of the Dragon King of the South Sea. In fact, he was also anxious to get the metal and wood elements in his hands. One man and one dragon hit it off. Therefore, Xiao Hua's figure flashed and arrived in front of one of the tower-shaped halls in the Seven Stars Palace. Buzz! A beam of light shot out from the hall and covered Xiao Hua. Then, a huge whirlpool appeared in the sea and dragged Xiao Hua in. Oh! Xiao Hua's figure just moved. He seemed to have discovered something. His body emitted a bronze brilliance and blocked the suction force. He looked at the other 6 palaces again. When Ao Qian saw Xiao Hua fly out, he was so happy that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. One of his dragon claws was already on Long Bay. When he saw Xiao Hua suddenly stop, his heart instantly froze and stopped at his throat. He thought that Xiao Hua had discovered something unusual and was very nervous. Fortunately, Xiao Hua only stayed in the sea for a short while. He withdrew his magic power and followed the whirlpool into the Seven Stars Palace. When the whirlpool gradually shrank, it turned into fine lines on the surface of a shell. Buzz! Buzz! When the 7 palaces of the Seven Stars Hall emitted a rumbling sound at the same time, Ao Qian narrowed his eyes and slapped the dragon shell with one of his dragon claws. The dragon-slaying saber from before flew out again. It flashed through the air and landed on one of Ao Qian's dragon claws and abdomen. Swoosh! Half of the dragon claws were sliced off, and a gash that was dozens of feet long appeared on his abdomen. Dragon blood gushed out like a fountain. Quick, quick, quickly send a message to Royal Father. Ao Qian shouted in pain. The Dao Sect's Xiao Hua came to visit my South Sea Dragon Palace. The first Crown Prince, second Crown Prince, third Crown Prince, and this king received him as a Dragon Master and brought Dragon Master Xiao to tour the South Sea Dragon Palace. However, Xiao Hua harbored evil intentions. When he came to the Seven Stars Palace, he suddenly attacked and heavily injured this king. He even snatched the trial taker's token from this king's hands. He used the token to sneak into the Seven Stars Palace. The first Crown Prince, second Crown Prince, and third Crown Prince furiously chased him into the Seven Stars Palace. Yes, this subordinate understands. When the dragon general beside the huge whale heard the order, he raised his dragon claws and took out a dragon tool that looked like a wooden fish. Under the urging of dragon chi, the entire dragon chi emitted an earthy yellow light. The dragon general said a few words to the dragon tool. The dragon tool flickered slightly as if it was breathing. A moment later, a surprised voice came from the dragon tool. Yes, fourth prince. This subordinate will immediately use the Four Seas message to inform His Majesty the Dragon King. This king is in so much pain. Ao Pu, why aren't you hurriedly sending out the alarm and putting the entire Dragon Palace on emergency alert? Have the South Sea Great General lead 100,000 members of the oceanic race to surround the Seven Stars Palace. Also, ask the 4 old consecrators to come to the Seven Stars Palace. This king is afraid that the 3 princes are not Xiao Hua's opponents and will encounter trouble inside. Ao Qian screamed heartbreakingly at the flickering dragon tool. Fourth prince, fourth prince. The dragon general called Ao Pu hurried forward and called out. You should take the medicine for your injuries first. Now that things have come to this, there is no need to be too anxious. The 3 princes are all experts of the upper 7th level and the edge of the 8th level. That dragon master Xiao is merely a human. He won't. Nonsense. Not waiting for Ao Pu to finish, Ao Qian said angrily. You are not saying this because your blood is in danger. The 3 princes are this king's blood brothers. How can this king be at ease with them taking risks inside? That Xiao Hua's strength seems to have advanced by leaps and bounds. In a hurry, this king was heavily injured by him. If I cannot see my 3 brothers come out of the Seven Stars Palace safely, how can this king be at ease to heal my injuries? Ao Pu was so moved that even tears fell down. He kowtowed and said, Fourth prince, this subordinate knows that the prince has always placed filial piety and familial love in the first place. But, even if the prince does not heal his injuries now, it will be of no help. The eldest prince has entered the Seven Stars Palace. Only his crown prince token can mobilize the Southern Sea Great General. As for the 4 old consecrators, only His Majesty the Dragon King can move them. Alas, alas, what should I do? I can't just watch my 3 brothers. Ao Qian said anxiously. At this point, a mouthful of dragon blood spurted out from his mouth. A lot of blood gushed out from his abdomen. Ao Qian actually fainted. Fourth prince. Ao Pu was shocked and shouted, Dragon generals, quickly give the 4th prince medicine. You and the others should also be on guard. If the situation is urgent, we will quickly escort the 4th prince away. Who dares to take this king away? At this time, Ao Qian's weak voice came, this king must stay outside the Seven Stars Palace and live and die with my 3 brothers. Buzz buzz. At this time, the 7 tower-shaped palaces of the Seven Stars Palace let out a rapid rumbling sound. The entire sea of thousands of li actually trembled. Ao Qian's face showed surprise. His mouth was slightly open. However, a moment later, the corner of his mouth revealed a sinister smile. He cried out in alarm, Ao Pu, this, reporting to the 4th prince. Ao Pu was also extremely shocked. The 8th level trial of the Seven Stars Palace seems to have been activated. Damn Xiao Hua, this bastard is truly deranged. Ao Qian couldn't help but shout, Big Brother is only at the beginning of the 8th level of essence energy. This 8th level trial. Wouldn't it take his life? And 2nd brother and 3rd brother. 4th prince. On the other side of the dragon weapon, Ao Qian had long heard Ao Qian's words. He also hurriedly shouted, Are you sure this is the 8th level trial of the Seven Stars Palace? This king can't be sure. A cold light flashed in Ao Qian's eyes. He said in a low voice, After all, this king has only passed the 7th level trial. However, this king still knows a little about the phenomenon of the Seven Stars Palace. This might not be the 7th level trial. This subordinate understands. This subordinate will inform the Southern Sea General and ask him to make a decision. The dragon general on the other side of the dragon body was clearly experienced. He immediately determined the urgency of the matter from Ao Qian's words. He hurriedly replied and turned off the dragon weapon. Looking at the dim dragon weapon, Ao Qian's face clearly revealed a trace of relief. 4th prince. Ao Pu transmitted his voice in a low voice, How should we deal with this now? Back in Long Bay, the fourth prince didn't give any detailed instructions. Quick! Ao Qian hurriedly said, order all the dragon generals and the sea race to surround the Seven Stars Palace. We can't let the thief Xiao Hua escape easily. Also, Ao Pu, take this king's command arrow and mobilize all of this king's subordinates to the Seven Stars Palace to support. Yes, this subordinate understands. Ao Pu's face turned cold as he hurriedly replied. However, he still hesitated and reminded, Fourth Prince, your injuries, this king's injuries are nothing compared to the danger my three brothers are in. Ao Qian's face was still anxious as if he was deeply immersed in the act. When Ao Pu heard this, he immediately understood. The three princes were dead, so the fourth prince could only be injured as badly as possible. Ao Qian couldn't heal his injuries before the South Sea Dragon King returned. Fourth prince, take care. This subordinate will return and mobilize the troops. Ao Pu had already obtained Ao Qian's command token from Long Bay, so he didn't need to take it anymore. He responded, and his dragon body instantly disappeared in the sea. Ao Qian's subordinates had already gathered. They were only waiting for Ao Qian's command token to besiege the Seven Stars Palace. Xiao Hua held Ao Qian's command token in his hand and landed on the Seven Stars Palace. A huge whirlpool above the palace produced a suction force that was about to pull him in. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the seven tower-shaped palaces of the palace, and a somewhat strange feeling arose. Therefore, he immediately activated his magic power and stopped his body in midair. He looked at the structure of the entire palace again. Previously, when he saw that the entire palace was composed of 7 palaces, Xiao Hua didn't feel anything strange because it was impossible to see the secret of the suppression of the metalwood elemental magnetic dragon formation from the layout alone. When Ao Qian called this palace the Seven Stars Palace, Xiao Hua's heart moved. The 7 stars in the eyes of Taoist cultivators were naturally the Big Dipper, and the layout of the 7 palaces in this palace was extremely similar to the Big Dipper. Xiao Hua didn't care. At this moment, Xiao Hua understood that the 7 palaces in the palace were built in the shape of the Big Dipper, but the positions of Migres, Mizar, and Alcade were very slightly different from the Big Dipper in Xiao Hua's memory. What's going on? Xiao Hua frowned and thought to himself, could it be that this 7 stars palace isn't a pure Big Dipper array? Of course, it was only a moment before Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily again because the Big Dipper array in his memory was a Taoist array. Now, what was under his feet wasn't a Taoist array, but a dragon array of the Dragon Clan. It should be understandable that there were some differences in the layout of the 7 stars palace. Therefore, Xiao Hua withdrew his magic power and protected his body. His figure fell into the palace along with the whirlpool. Chapter 4302. It was somewhat similar to the dragon formation he encountered on the Dragon Island. As Xiao Hua's figure descended, several huge dragon marks mixed with the brilliance of dragon scales appeared near Xiao Hua. After that, a powerful dragon might rushed out from the formation and attacked Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was not worried at all. He only faintly smiled and rubbed his hands. Several crystal lights fell into the sky. A golden light transformed into a dragon image and protected Xiao Hua's body. When the dragon might fell into the dragon image, it instantly disappeared. The pressure of the entire space also disappeared. Swish! The country of 10,000 dragons flashed before his eyes. Countless dragon roars also swept past his ears. Xiao Hua's figure smoothly entered the 7 stars palace. Damn it! Xiao Hua's figure descended and looked all around. He unconsciously shouted in an exaggerated manner, sure enough, it's the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Just to suppress metal, wood, and magnetism, they spent so much effort. This 7 stars palace is comparable to the main hall of an ordinary sect in the Morning Rain continent. This space was at least 1,000 li in size. It was filled with serene blue seawater. This seawater was motionless like a solidified crystal. And above this space, 3 huge dragon images condensed into 3 huge dragon characters, 7 Stars Palace. There were no pillars or corridors in the entire space. Apart from the seawater and draconic runes, there were 7 different colored reefs above his head. These reefs were so huge that they were comparable to 7 islands. Each island was shaped like a turtle, a crab, a shrimp, a fish, and so on. Xiaohua's divine sense was not under any control inside this space. When Xiaohua's divine sense swept past these reefs, different auras flickered within them, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. However, Xiaohua could clearly feel that these auras were completely the auras of dragons. There was no difference in essence. Immediately after, Xiaohua swept his divine sense below his feet. However, he saw that the space below was completely serene blue. It was like an incomparably huge sea crystal. Even with Xiaohua's divine sense, he was actually unable to see the end. Moreover, the brilliance emitted from the 7 reefs intertwined with each other at the place where Xiaohua was at. Similarly, the brilliance also spread downwards. This spreading brilliance did not cause any abnormality. The magnetism that Xiaohua was expecting also did not show any sign of appearing. This dragon formation is really powerful. Xiaohua looked above his head and then below his feet. Other than the dragon's might, there was only the seawater. There was not a trace of origin magnetism leaking out at all. He could not help but feel impressed. But at the same time, he felt a little regretful. He had been too impatient. He should have waited for the Southern Sea Dragon King to return and asked him to open the dragon formation that was suppressing the metal-wood magnetism. He only needed to keep the metal-wood magnetism. Forget it, forget it. If I want to get some benefits, I have no choice but to use some tricks. Otherwise, when the old Dragon King of the Southern Sea comes back and haggles with this Xiao after he collects the metal and wood elemental magnetism. How could Xiaohua not know what he was thinking in his heart? Wasn't it because he was afraid that the South Sea Dragon King would suddenly change his mind and turn around to deny his promise, causing him to be happy for nothing? That was why he hurriedly coaxed the 4th Prince Ao Qian to bring him to the 7 Stars Palace. At the same time that Xiaohua broke the dragon formation, he also wanted to give the South Sea Dragon Palace a show of strength, so as to avoid any future troubles. As he thought about it, Xiaohua activated the water escape technique and was about to escape downwards. Who would have thought that just as he moved, tens of thousands of whirlpools suddenly appeared in the seawater within a radius of 100 li. These whirlpools, without exception, all of them emitted different colored lights. At the same time, the 7 reefs above his head emitted hundreds of ripples that fell into these lights. As the whirlpools emitted whistling sounds, the green water in the entire space gradually turned into tens of thousands of flying swords along with the whirlpools. They danced around the entire space. Oh! Xiaohua slightly frowned when he saw the flying water swords tearing the space apart. The sharpness of the water swords was much sharper than that of a flying sword tempered by ordinary materials. He was rather puzzled as to how an offensive method could appear within the dragon formation that suppressed the metal and wood elemental magnetism. However, this level of flying sword formation still wouldn't fall into Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua made a gesture in his hand, and layers of flower-like flames flew out with Xiaohua as the center. These flowers were only one layer at first, but when they came into contact with the flying swords condensed from seawater, Shua. At the same time, a slightly smaller flame flew out from the blooming and pounced on another flying sword. The previously blooming flame quickly engulfed the flying sword that came into contact with it, emitting a low rumbling sound. Just like this, in just a moment, the water swords within hundreds of li were easily destroyed by Xiaohua. The instant the last water sword was swallowed by the flame, the spot where the whirlpool was formed, where the various colored lights were formed, suddenly began to vibrate at an even faster pace. Tens of thousands of ripples began to unbridledly ripple within the space. At the same time, the 7 reefs emitted a bright brilliance, projecting light beams of several li in size into these fluctuations. Boom! There was another chaotic rumbling sound. Tens of thousands of brilliance turned into light balls the size of baskets and began to teleport within the space of hundreds of li, and the seawater in the space began to thin. Boom boom boom. Xiao Hua frowned slightly. He didn't hurry to dodge. He urged his transcendence energy, and lightning surged around his body. Several balls of light collided with his protective lightning with lightning speed. The balls of light exploded, and an extremely loud explosion rang out. Moreover, the lightning on the surface of Xiao Hua's body was also torn apart by the explosion. It's a little strange. Xiao Hua tried the power of this light ball. He raised his hand, and his spiritual power shackled the water light of dozens of meters. Sure enough, several orange-colored balls of light were revealed from the watery light. Xiao Hua reached out again and grabbed one of the light balls. The light ball spun in Xiao Hua's palm, and at the core of the light ball, a tiny dragon mark was faintly discernible. Puff! Xiao Hua spat out a mouthful of true qi. Boom! That light ball exploded with a loud bang. However, under the confinement of Xiao Hua's spiritual power, the light ball couldn't destroy anything. This kind of power. Is it an attack? Or a defense? Xiao Hua was really puzzled. However, when he scanned with his divine sense, he saw so many light balls flying towards him. His scalp went numb. Humph! Xiao Hua coldly snorted. He scanned with his divine sense again, and the space within hundreds of li was confined. Then, he gently raised his hand and pointed at the crystal-like seawater that was confined. Crack crack crack. There was a burst of chaotic sounds, and countless lightning bolts shot out from this point. In an instant, all the light balls within hundreds of li were destroyed. Then, Xiao Hua withdrew his domain, and his figure turned into lightning bolts, and he escaped into the depths of the space. Boom boom boom. There were 7 consecutive loud rumbles. The sound of space was heard, and the 7 reef-like things exploded one after another. The entire space was shaking violently. At the same time, the boundless seawater in the entire space was also exploding. In the blink of an eye, it turned into 7 layers of blue light, and fell into the 7 reef-like things. At this time, the 7 exploded reef-like things emitted an incomparably dazzling brilliance, as if there were 7 suns in the sky. Ha! Xiao Hua's figure escaped for more than 1,000 li suddenly. A layer of extremely strange restriction appeared below him, and it blocked his figure. Xiao Hua didn't have time to use his divine sense to investigate this restriction. Buzz buzz. There was a buzzing sound above his head. When Xiao Hua raised his head, he saw that the space under the illumination of the 7 suns was already covered in layers of dragon patterns. These dragon patterns emitted a desolate aura that Xiao Hua was familiar with, and they covered the entire space. As these dragon tattoos spread out, the entire space changed under the light. Numerous towering mountains, towering peaks, and towering ancient trees appeared in the space. Roar roar. After the desolate aura appeared, huge dragons with ancient dragon might flew out from the 7 suns' light and rushed towards Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was stunned at first, but when his divine sense swept over, he found that these dragons were just light and shadows. They only had dragon might, but they didn't have dragon bodies. His heart was at ease. Roar. Xiao Hua roared and displayed his transcendence golden body. In this space, it transformed into thousands of feet in size. Then, without using any wishful staff, Xiao Hua waved his fist. As soon as his fist fell, cracks appeared in the space. As soon as the dragon's light and shadow touched the fist, its brilliance immediately dimmed. When the fist fell, it smashed the dragon's might, leaving only wisps of ancient dragon patterns floating in the air. After a while, they disappeared again. While Xiao Hua was testing his skills in the 7 Stars Hall, Eo Qian, who was outside the hall, felt like a year had passed. Everything happened step by step according to his arrangements. Even Xiao Hua's strength had unexpectedly reached the height that he had arranged. He should have proudly raised his dragon tail in the air. However, when he saw the brilliance emitted from the 7 halls of the 7 Stars Hall, and this brilliance fell into the surrounding sea. Endless water elemental energy of heaven and earth madly fell into the 7 Stars Hall, his heart tightened again. Damn, this Xiao Hua, what kind of monster is he? It's only been 200 years, but he has cultivated to such a level. This strength is more than enough to kill the 3 princes, but if this guy's strength is a little higher, the current array of the 7 Stars Hall may not be able to trap him. If he discovered something strange, wouldn't he have to escape from there? If he escapes, it's fine. If he doesn't leave, he will find this king for an explanation, or even capture this king. What should I do? Why hasn't father come back yet? Where's the South Sea General? Why hasn't he come back yet? Just when Ao Qian felt that he was about to become an ant on a hot pan, an old voice sounded, "Fourth Prince, what's going on?" Chapter 4303. Great General. Ao Qian heard the voice and let out a long sigh of relief. He turned his head and shouted, "You're finally here." Behind Ao Qian, tens of thousands of streaks of light shot out from different splashes of water. When they got close to Ao Qian, all of the streaks of light rapidly gathered. In just a few breaths of time, a massive golden dragon appeared from the streaks of light. Where's the Crown Prince? The figure of the Southern Sea Great General had already appeared. His flashing golden eyes immediately looked at Ao Qian, as if he wanted to see through Ao Qian's heart. Ao Qian's heart jumped, but the expression on his face didn't change. He knew in his heart that although the Southern Sea Great General wasn't loyal to the Crown Prince, he was responsible for the safety of the entire Southern Sea after the departure of the Southern Sea Dragon King. Protecting the Crown Prince was his primary responsibility. Now that the Crown Prince was in danger, if he said anything wrong, he might be killed. Therefore, Ao Qian took a deep breath and told the lie that he had been planning for a long time. Ao Qian's words didn't have any big flaws. After all, Xiao Hua had caused a great commotion when he broke into the outer array of the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Although the Southern Sea Great General wasn't in the array, he had already received a report from the Sea General. He originally wanted to chase after Xiao Hua, but after all, he wasn't close to the Dragon Palace. Moreover, Xiao Hua was welcomed into the Dragon Palace by the 4th Crown Prince, so he didn't pay much attention. However, he didn't understand why Xiao Hua, who was a dragon master, would suddenly come to the 7 Stars Hall when he was touring the Dragon Palace in the sea carriage of the Crown Prince. He also didn't know why the 3 Crown Princes would disregard their own safety and chase Xiao Hua into the 7 Stars Hall. Seeing that the level 8 trial array of the 7 Stars Hall had been activated and the entire hall was emitting a strong fluctuation, the Southern Sea Great General couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He couldn't help but ask, 4th Crown Prince, even if Xiao Longshi has the strength of an 8th level origin energy like what 4th Crown Prince said, it's still impossible for him to withstand the level 8 refinement array in the 7 Stars Hall. Ao Qian's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the 7 palaces and the flame-like lights in the long corridors between the palaces. He said indifferently, now is not the time to discuss Xiao Hua's strength, it is the time to discuss the life and death of this king's 3 elder brothers. Wait for this general to score a goal. The Southern Sea General gritted his teeth and shouted, if the Crown Prince is still here, this general will risk my life to rescue him. Great General. Ao Qian turned to look at the Great General of the South Sea. His dragon eyes were already bloodshot. He enunciated each word clearly. It's not just you. I also want to go in and save my 3 brothers. However, the level 8 trial array of the 7 Stars Palace had already been activated for half a cup of tea's time. The entire 7 Stars Palace was enveloped by the array. This king does not know what the 8th level trial is, but this king knows that under the 7th level trial, this king was nearly killed by dozens of dragon forms. Now that I'm already level 8, my 3 brothers, not only are they being attacked by the trial array, there's also Xiao Hua, whose strength has already reached the upper 8th grade of elemental energy. Can they survive? 4th Crown Prince. The Southern Sea General coldly said, not only are you trying to delay this general from entering the 7 Stars Palace to save the Crown Prince, you're also saying that the Crown Prince has already lost his life. What are you thinking? Ao Qian stared at the Southern Sea General. His eyes were also cold. However, after a moment, he slightly shook his head and said, you're only the Southern Sea General. How would you know what this king is thinking? You can go in, but you must leave behind your great general token. Damn it! The Southern Sea General angrily said, 4th Crown Prince, are you trying to seize the opportunity to seize control of the Southern Sea region? How can this great general token be controlled by you? This king does not want to control it. Ao Qian still shook his head. But if the great general wants to enter the 7 Stars Palace, then the great general must leave the great general token to your trusted subordinate outside the 7 Stars Palace. This king does not want Xiao Hua to kill you and then obtain the great general token and calmly escape the 7 Stars Palace. The great general was somewhat hesitant. After all, he knew in his heart that the great general token could mobilize the army of the Southern Sea. At the same time, it could also control part of the Dragon Palace's restrictive spell. If he could freely enter the 7 Stars Palace with the Great General Token, then if Xiao Hua obtained the Great General Token, he would naturally be able to calmly escape from the 7 Stars Palace and even escape from the Dragon Palace. If Xiao Hua really killed the 3 Crown Princes in the 7 Stars Palace, then wouldn't he be helping the evildoer? In addition, this king has already informed the 4 old consecrators. Ao Qian saw the Southern Sea General hesitate and took advantage of the situation to say, if the great general enters the 7 Stars Palace, this king is not sure if the 4 old consecrators will activate the 7 Stars Palace's Great Formation. Of course, the Southern Sea General knew what the Great Formation Ao Qian was talking about was. He only hesitated for a moment before suddenly asking, what about Ao Ban, Ao Cheng, and Ao Qian? Ao Ban replied almost without hesitation, they naturally chased into the 7 Stars Palace in order to protect the 3 kings. The Southern Sea General nodded slightly, a thoughtful look flashing through his eyes. The 3 dragon generals he just mentioned were all the trusted dragon generals of the 1st Crown Prince, 2nd Crown Prince, and 3rd Crown Prince, just like Ao Qian's subordinate Ao Pu. These 3 dragon generals were all meticulous dragons. How could they casually follow the 3 Crown Princes into the 7 Stars Palace? Of course, the Southern Sea General could not rule out that there was a situation that he did not know about that forced these dragon generals to follow the 3 Crown Princes in, but, this was already not something he wanted to think about. After the Southern Sea General nodded, he raised his hand and took out the Great General Token from the long bay. He calmly said, 4th Prince, please wait a moment. This general has already issued the order. The 100,000 sea race closest to here are heading towards the 7 Stars Palace. After these sea race have gathered, this general will activate the Great Formation of the 7 Stars Palace. To prevent Xiao Hua from escaping. Hearing the Southern Sea General call him 4th Prince, the corner of Ao Qian's mouth curled into a faint proud smile. He then solemnly nodded and said, that's right. What the great general thinks is exactly what this king wants. If my 3 brothers are still alive, they can take advantage of this opportunity to escape from inside, it's just that the Dragon King will be back soon. The Southern Sea General reminded him worriedly. Ao Qian also sighed and replied, this king did not go through the great general's order to lead Xiao Hua into the Dragon Palace from the Great Formation of the Dragon Palace. This is this king's fault. This king will definitely not hide it. Sigh, this matter cannot be blamed on the fourth prince. Although the Southern Sea General did not understand the specific situation, seeing that Ao Qian had begun to form an offensive and defensive alliance, he hurriedly sighed and said, Xiaohua is the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island. Not to mention the fourth prince's negligence, even this general does not dare to offend him. This matter cannot be blamed on the fourth prince. Everything is up to father's judgment. This king only hopes that my three brothers are safe and sound. Ao Qian glanced at the Seven Stars Palace and said with extreme sadness. The Southern Sea General knew what Ao Qian meant. He released his origin sense and swept through the space near the Seven Stars Palace. With a solemn expression, he said, "Not good." The great formation of the Seven Stars Palace actually had some flaws under Xiaohua's attack. If he used the trial formation of the Seven Stars Palace to kill the three princes, then now. I'm afraid he wants to escape from the formation. Ao Qian hurriedly shouted, "Quick, great general. You must avenge this king's three brothers, okay?" The Southern Sea General knew that this was the time to make a choice. He clenched his teeth and flew up. The huge golden dragon coiled in the air and waved the great general's token in its claws into the palace where the Migres star was located. At the same time, the Southern Sea General spat out a mouthful of dragon breath. Aoo. A sound similar to a wolf's howl came from the palace. A pillar of dragon patterns several miles in size condensed and rushed into the sky above the dragon palace. The dragon patterns began to rotate in the blink of an eye. Countless thumb-sized spiritual chi of heaven and earth fell into the pillar. A huge amount of spiritual chi rushed into the Migres star of the Seven Stars Palace. After the brilliance of the palace reached its peak, it suddenly disappeared. Then, the six palaces on the left also extinguished one after another in different order. However, when the brilliance of all the palaces disappeared, the entire bottom of the sea once again produced a sound similar to that of a drum. The bottom of the sea shook again. Inside the Seven Stars Palace, Xiaohua urged his Transcendent's golden body to shatter the shadows of the huge dragons. The entire space gradually fell into a kind of dim yellow. The thousands of dragon patterns disappeared along with this dim yellow. However, Xiaohua's expression didn't become relaxed because of the destruction of the Great Desolation phenomenon. Instead, he looked at the dim yellow that filled the sky and frowned. Boom boom. Another familiar rumbling sound came from 1,000 miles to the left of Xiaohua. At the place where the dragon shadows were shattered, huge earthen yellow spheres like stars gradually revealed their majestic figures in the dim yellow. Giant stone formation. Xiaohua pinched his chin and looked at the spheres filling up the space of 1,000 miles. He couldn't help but be surprised. This great formation doesn't look like a great formation that suppresses the metal and wood elements. Could it be that this Xiao hasn't reached the Great Formation and is now just outside the defense of the Great Formation? Was it laid down by the previous masters of the Southern Sea Dragon Palace to prevent people from destroying this Great Formation? Just as Xiaohua thought of this, the earthen yellow spheres began to shake and rumble. They smashed toward Xiaohua according to a rather mysterious trajectory. Humph. Xiaohua snorted coldly and released the power of his domain. He wanted to rely on the power of his domain to break this great formation. Unfortunately, just as he released the power of his domain, it was immediately disturbed by a strange fluctuation. Apart from being able to protect his body, it couldn't go far. Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed again and shouted, if it were any other great formation, this Xiao might still be a little hesitant. However, this giant stone formation was something that this Xiao had experienced before I was pregnant. Looking at it now. It's really a little different. Chapter 4304. Just as Xiaohua was about to urge the hammer of divine will to smash these spheres into pieces, he discovered that the surface of these spheres was covered with uneven textures. These textures seemed to be innate. Waves of fluctuations were emitted from these textures, attracting the world's origin chi from within the void. The entire sphere was like a trembling fireball. When Xiaohua's divine will landed on it, it was immediately shattered by the vibrations, unable to exert any real strength. It seemed that even if Xiaohua wanted to use his divine will to smash the sphere, it would be impossible. Even so, so what? The corner of Xiaohua's mouth curled up. He raised his hand and slapped the top of his head. Puff. 5 elements true qi spurted out and condensed into the shape of a huge hand in midair. Woo! Wherever the wind passed, the void was torn apart by this huge hand. A sphere near the huge hand fell into this huge hand. Not only was the world's origin qi near the sphere imprisoned and could no longer tremble, even the textures on the sphere began to crack under the huge hand. Of course, in an instant, the sphere was crushed by the huge hand. Boom! With a loud sound, it turned into rich earth origin qi of heaven and earth. Oh! It seems that Ao Qian was right. The bodies of the dragon clan in the South Sea Dragon Palace are mostly of the earth origin qi. The earth origin qi of heaven and earth in the South Sea Dragon Palace is also much richer than in other places. Presumably, there must be an earth origin stone vein near the Dragon Palace. The existence of metal and wood origin magnetism really affected the South Sea Dragon Palace. Seeing this situation, Xiaohua's doubts were reduced. Boom, boom, boom. While Xiaohua was pondering, the huge hand did not slow down. The huge hand formed by 5 elements true qi grabbed a sphere in the air and destroyed it. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, it had already crushed more than half of the spheres in the air. Swish swish swish. The sphere disappeared to a certain extent. Beneath Xiaohua's feet, the seemingly unbreakable shackles began to loosen. Magnetic forces suddenly passed through the shackles and fell onto Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly moved his body to dodge, but he had only moved a few hundred feet away when the divine will had already scanned the incoming magnetic force. He stopped again. His face was filled with confusion. He actually flew a few hundred feet in the direction of the magnetic force. Whoosh! The slightly weak magnetic force passed through Xiaohua's body. Not only did it not cause any harm to Xiaohua's body, but it also caused the little dot inside Xiaohua's body to tremble slightly. It seemed to have stimulated the bloodline of the absolute saint in the little dot. How strange! Xiaohua might have thought that it was a coincidence when a single strand of origin magnetic force was like this, but it was the same for all the strands of origin magnetic force that entered his body. Rather than saying that this magnetic force was attacking Xiaohua, it was better to say that it was giving Xiaohua a massage. Xiaohua himself had refined the spirit execution primary light, and had even refined the magnetic force into the spirit execution primary light. Therefore, he was very familiar with the magnetic force. Seeing that the tamed magnetic force was completely different from the magnetic force he had seen in the other magnetic force spaces, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. Boom! Just as Xiaohua was starting to feel suspicious, another huge sound rang out in the sky. Xiaohua's divine sense quickly swept out, only to see that at the location of the heaven-forsaken star, the star that was as brilliant as the sun was emitting a brilliance that was 100 times brighter than the other stars. This brilliance burned the space within 100 miles to the point that it was somewhat distorted. Then, from this distorted space, a powerful metal and wood magnetic force crazily surged out. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out in surprise, What's going on? Why is this magnetic force of metal and wood several times stronger than the other magnetic forces? Could it be that, the 7 stars formation of the South Sea Dragon Palace, isn't used to suppress the magnetic force of metal and wood? Instead, it's using the magnetic force of metal and wood? It's just that, what does this formation use the magnetic force of metal and wood for? Only now did Xiaohua truly guess the purpose of the formation. Unfortunately, he already didn't have the time to think about it. The Migres star, along with the magnetic force of metal and wood, emitted a powerful destructive force. This brilliant star seemed to have been plucked from the blue dome of heaven and fell to the ground with a loud bang, falling towards Xiaohua's location. Humph. Xiaohua coldly snorted again and waved his hand to take out the spirit-killing vital light. However, what made Xiaohua somewhat surprised was that although the Migres star fell, the powerful aura of desolation mixed with the killing magnetic force of metal and would also seal the corner of the space. It didn't attack Xiaohua's location at all. Boom. After the Migres star fell, the Fecta star to its left also fell. Similarly, even more magnetic forces of metal and wood rushed into the Fecta star. These magnetic forces of metal and wood also intertwined with the magnetic forces of the Migres star, filling up the space between the two. Not good. This is a large entrapment formation. Xiaohua looked at these magnetic forces of metal and wood beginning to intertwine with each other and immediately understood. He formed a seal in his hand and hit the sword gourd. The spirit-killing vital light immediately rushed out of the sky and fell on the magnetic forces of metal and wood within the range of the Fecta star and the Migres star. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, these magnetic forces of metal and wood were different from the magnetic forces of wood and water and fire and earth that Xiaohua encountered in the ruins. Not only did they not merge with the magnetic forces of the spirit-killing vital light, but they instead resisted each other and were not absorbed by the sword gourd. Xiaohua's heart thumped for no reason. Thinking of his encounter in the South Sea Dragon Palace today, an indescribable gloom arose from the bottom of his heart. Damn it, could it be that I was deceived by Ao Qian? But Xiaohua was extremely puzzled again. In the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, I didn't directly clash with Ao Qian. Why would he scheme against me for no reason? Although Xiaohua didn't understand why Ao Qian schemed against him, the facts in front of him had already explained everything. As the Fecta star descended, the Dubhe star, Merak star, Alioth star, Mizar star, and Alcade star also descended, completely sealing the space around Xiaohua. In fact, after these 7 stars descended, the space around Xiaohua expanded to several thousand kilometers. In particular, the metal and wood elemental magnetism driven by each star had filled up all the gaps. Not only were there dense light shadows as far as the eye could see, there were also many metal and wood elemental magnetism seeping out of the sealed space. Entangling with different metal and wood elemental magnetism, they formed strange metal and wood elemental magnetism light shadows. Xiaohua's divine sense could no longer penetrate this huge magnetic light and shadow of metal and wood. He could only use his eyes to see this strange light and shadow. The 7 stars each occupied one side, arranging the skeleton of this light and shadow. Countless magnetic forces of metal and wood formed the outline of the light and shadow, densely packed like muscles. This light and shadow is so familiar. Xiaohua suddenly stared blankly. A familiar feeling involuntarily emerged from the bottom of his heart. However, he was currently inside the light and shadow, so he couldn't see everything clearly. For a moment, he couldn't tell what this familiar light and shadow was. Swish swish swish. Once the light and shadow formed, countless magnetic forces of metal and wood mixed with the 7 strange waves began to attack Xiaohua. The waves and magnetic forces of metal and wood hadn't yet fallen, but the power that could tear a body apart had already firmly suppressed Xiaohua's body. And the strange waves of magnetic forces that were even stronger than the magnetic forces entered Xiaohua's body. Boom! Xiaohua felt his blood vessels explode all of a sudden, as if they were about to break out of his body. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly urged his soul technique to stabilize his blood vessels. Swish! The magnetic forces of metal and wood had already entered his body. Fellow Taoist. Just as Xiaohua was pondering how to deal with it, Feng Wu's ecstatic voice sounded, "Don't resist. This is the dragon formation used by the dragon clan to awaken their bloodline power and temper their body. It's extremely helpful for Ai's bloodline fusion. Ah! How is that possible? Xiao Hua was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. That Ao Qian is neither our relative nor our friend. How could he let us use such an important dragon formation? Moreover, I increasingly feel that this 7 stars palace is filled with a strange feeling. Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. Feng Wu smiled and said, although this great formation is filled with killing intent, it's still a dragon formation used for training. Of course, if you're not strong enough and recklessly enter this place, you'll definitely be killed by these magnetic forces of metal and wood. However, for us, this great formation is a golden opportunity that can only be encountered by chance. Damn it, who cares what it means? Such a great opportunity is hard to come by. Why don't we hurry up and enjoy it? Xiao Hua didn't feel like wasting time. He urged his body to move, and a huge phoenix body gradually appeared. The countless waves of magnetic forces of metal and wood all entered Xiao Hua's phoenix body. I understand now. As Xiao Hua's phoenix body expanded, the space also expanded. Gradually, Xiao Hua understood the entire light and shadow. He suddenly realized something and said, isn't this light and shadow the great god of Meng Mountains? Isn't he the great magus who is said to be able to control the power of bloodline? Outside of Xiao Hua's huge phoenix body, 7 bright stars, namely Dubhe, Merak, Fekta, Migres, Aliath, Mizar, and Alcade, were shining with various colors. Individually, they formed the shape of the Big Dipper. But when these 7 bright stars were connected by the white and green magnetic forces of metal and wood, they formed the image of a great magus with a human head, a beast body, and 2 green snakes on his ears. Of course, this image of a great magus was slightly different from what Xiao Hua knew. Moreover, there were many dragon patterns and dragon scales mixed in between the green and white colors, making this so-called great magus look more similar to the dragon clan. However, whether this light and shadow was the great god of Meng Mountains or a great god of the dragon clan was no longer important. What was important was that the entire great formation was letting out a loud rumbling sound. The entire 7 stars palace disappeared in this rumbling sound, and a huge primal world was slowly being born under the influence of the waves and magnetic forces of metal and wood. As the primal world was born, a strange wave rushed out from the Dubhe, one of the 7 bright stars, and the other 6 stars also responded to it. Then, the entire primal world was filled with a scene of heaven and earth collapsing, and mountains roaring and tsunamis roaring. The wave also rushed into Xiao Hua's phoenix body like a tsunami, urging the fusion of the bloodline of the Supreme Saint within the 132 million tiny dots.